the climate is changing, and the impact is getting more severe with each passing year. Global actions to slow climate change are needed to adapt to conditions that are now inevitable. Higher temperatures, rising seas, fiercer storms, more unpredictable rainfall, and acidic oceans. We have and can work together to find solutions for these unprecedented challenges. Concrete actions are needed now. Fortunately, there is overwhelming evidence that the social, economic, and environmental benefits of ambitious climate action outweighs the costs. But we can only adapt and respond effectively by collaborating. Indonesia and the Netherlands are committed to scale up our joint efforts to adapt to climate change. Against this backdrop, the Netherlands hosted the Climate Adaptation Summit on 25 and 26 January. With more than 32 world leaders present, more than 18,000 registrations and 160 side events, the CAS was a big success. Clear commitments were made to collaborate globally and further accelerate adaptation action. Both Indonesia and the Netherlands actively took part in this summit, with our nation's leaders asking for more and concrete ways to cooperate between and within nations to make climate adaptation work for everyone.
KTT ini harus dapat melipat gandakan aksi iklim dunia melalui solidaritas, kolaborasi, dan kepemimpinan kolektif global.
And this action is essential, because climate change can be seen and felt all over the world. And also because, as COVID-19 has shown, in order to deal with risks, it's crucial that we show resilience, and that we do so together.
Unless we act now, it's game over for global society.
To design and implement policies to prevent further climate change and adapt to the impact of changes already happening, the Netherlands and Indonesia recently organized a Climate Adaptation Summit follow-up event under the wings of our Science and Research Collaboration Program, WINNER.
We need to adapt to a new normal global health landscape and a more extreme climate simultaneously. Indonesia appreciates this opportunity, and we will share implementation successes and announcement on new initiative, partnership, and actions to accelerate adaptation in the summit.
the climate is changing, and the impact is getting more severe with each passing year. Global actions to slow climate change are needed to adapt to conditions that are now inevitable. Higher temperatures, rising seas, fiercer storms, more unpredictable rainfall, and acidic oceans. We have and can work together to find solutions for these unprecedented challenges. Concrete actions are needed now. Fortunately, there is overwhelming evidence that the social, economic, and environmental benefits of ambitious climate action outweighs the costs. But we can only adapt and respond effectively by collaborating. Indonesia and the Netherlands are committed to scale up our joint efforts to adapt to climate change. Against this backdrop, the Netherlands hosted the Climate Adaptation Summit on 25 and 26 January. With more than 32 world leaders present, more than 18,000 registrations and 160 side events, the CAS was a big success. Clear commitments were made to collaborate globally and further accelerate adaptation action. Both Indonesia and the Netherlands actively took part in this summit, with our nation's leaders asking for more and concrete ways to cooperate between and within nations to make climate adaptation work for everyone.
KTT ini harus dapat melipat gandakan aksi iklim dunia melalui solidaritas, kolaborasi, dan kepemimpinan kolektif global.
And this action is essential, because climate change can be seen and felt all over the world. And also because, as COVID-19 has shown, in order to deal with risks, it's crucial that we show resilience, and that we do so together.
Unless we act now, it's game over for global society.
To design and implement policies to prevent further climate change and adapt to the impact of changes already happening, the Netherlands and Indonesia recently organized a Climate Adaptation Summit follow-up event under the wings of our Science and Research Collaboration Program, WINNER.
We need to adapt to a new normal global health landscape and a more extreme climate simultaneously. Indonesia appreciates this opportunity, and we will share implementation successes and announcement on new initiative, partnership, and actions to accelerate adaptation in the summit.
Good afternoon from Jakarta, and welcome to the Dutch-Indonesian Private Sector Engagement in the Race to Zero. My name is Esther, and I'll be your MC and co-moderator for the day. This forum is brought to you and co-hosted by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia and the Netherlands Embassy in Indonesia. And this forum will focus on the sustainability and climate actions that private sector are taking in order to tackle the climate crisis. Today's forum will be divided into two sessions. The first session, currently ongoing, will focus on companies' activities and best practices related to climate action and sustainability. Later on at 3 p.m., we will begin our second session, which will discuss how the private sector works together and collaborate with the public sector, with the knowledge sector, as well as the government in order to meet their climate and sustainability goals. Before we begin today's discussion, I would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Lambert Grimes, who's the Netherlands Ambassador to Indonesia, Timor-Leste, and ASEAN. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Esther. Thank you so much for having me in your session. Good afternoon to everyone here. Good morning, very early morning in the Netherlands to those who are participating from the Netherlands. Great pleasure for me, great honor being here. Of course, first of all, big thanks to FPCI for co-organizing this meeting, this event together with the Dutch Embassy, Pak Dino Patijalal. Esther, thank you very much for your engagement. And of course, thanks very much to our distinguished speakers of today, Ibu Cherry Nur Salim, co-chair of the Trihita Karana Forum on Blended Finance and Innovation for Better Business, Better World, also vice chairman of the GITI Group. I'd also like to welcome Ibu Neneng Gunadi of GRAP Indonesia, Pak Rami Hajar of Signify Southeast Asia, Pak Aziz Arman, Vice President Director of PT Indica Energy, Ibu Ika Noviera, Corporate Affairs Director of PT Multibintang, Pak Roland Coppens, General Manager, Air France KLM, Southeast Asia and Oceania, and Pak Agus Sari, Bentang Alam, Pak Jason Park of DSM, and Ibu Jasmine Sagita, Royal Lestari. It's an impressive lineup, and thank you very much to all of you for joining us. Now, the private sector plays a key role in addressing climate change and sustainability challenging. That's not only the key message of today's session, but I think it's also the key message which we want to share with the Indonesian society and companies in particular. And I want to stress it does pay off, because companies which have heavily invested through research and development on sustainable and innovative production processes, and which have engaged in the energy transition, are now doing much better than others, and they can accelerate growth. On the other hand, companies which are late in accepting alternative strategies may still see short-term gains, but will be facing a gloomy future, a gloomy picture where their stranded assets in the future will remain a heavy burden. A heavy burden not only for these companies themselves, but also for society as a whole. So tackling climate change in the end does pay off. And it's not only beneficial to companies, but also to societies. Just last Sunday, President Joe Biden said, "When I think of climate change, I think jobs." And there's more, because engaging the private sector is essential for multiple reasons. It can mobilize financial resources, technical capabilities, it can leverage the efforts of governments, it can engage civil society and community efforts, and it can develop innovative climate services and adaptation technologies. Now, according to research by the Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in the world, which evaluated 56 academic studies, companies with high ratings for environmental, social, and governance factors, the so-called ESG factors, have lower cost of debt and equity. Almost 90% of the studies they reviewed show that companies with high ESG ratings, so environmental, social, and governance ratings, outperform the market in the medium and long term. Another project, which is called the Carbon Disclosure Project, found something similar. Companies in its Carbon Disclosure Leadership Index and the Carbon Performance Leadership Index, which are included based on disclosure and performance on greenhouse gas emissions, record superior stock market returns. So companies in the Carbon Disclosure Leadership Index substantially outperformed the FTSE Global 500 Index. Third example, research by Harvard and London Business School economists shows that sustainability initiatives actually help to improve financial performance. The study examined two matched groups of 90 companies, and the companies operated in the same sectors. They were of similar size, and they also had similar capital structures, operating performance and growth opportunities. But the only significant difference was one group had created governance structures related to sustainability and made substantive long-term investments. The other group had not. Now, the investment of $1 in a evaluated portfolio of high sustainability companies over a period of 17 years would have grown to almost $23, compared with only $15 for the portfolio of the low sustainability companies. The high sustainability companies also did better with respect to return on assets and return on equity. So developing a corporate culture of sustainability is a source of competitive advantage for a company in the long run. And to be successful, the private sector needs a strong enabling environment. In other words, sustainability efforts need to be an organizational and a governmental priority. And the government needs to facilitate the framework, the resources for companies to be able to take climate action and become more sustainable by providing the needed fiscal stimulus and a clear and encouraging policy framework. And we see that in many countries, including in Indonesia at the moment, that the current policy environment hampers sustainability and climate action, or at least it doesn't really very much encourage so. Fossil fuels, and particularly coal, continue to benefit from a favorable policy environment, and it remains heavily subsidized here in Indonesia. While, despite the vast potential, renewable forms of energy continue to play a relatively small role and are still faced with an unfavorable policy framework. So I talked about private sector, I talked about the role of the government, but I also would like to highlight the role of knowledge institutions, a third dimension, because cooperation between the private sector, government, and the knowledge sector is vital to find innovative ways to achieve our goals. And in the Netherlands, this cooperation between the three parties, the three sides, we call it the triple helix model, sometimes also called the Dutch diamond approach. And it has indeed proved to be key to innovation in the Netherlands, because this way of working is central in how innovation and business opportunities in many sectors are organized. It's based on the concept that cooperation between the government, business, and knowledge institutes is of the essence, because no sector can deal with climate action and sustainability measures just on its own. Now, the Dutch corporations present here have promising strategies in taking climate action and making their companies and the world around them more sustainable. They are united in the Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition, DSGC. And through this coalition, they want to use their leadership for the development towards a future-proof world and sustainable growth. This coalition, the Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition, stimulates activities and international cooperation within the chain, but also between sectors that contribute substantially to the realization of the UN SDGs by 2030. Let's have a look at a few companies. Take DSM, the old company which was established already in 1902, more than 100 years ago, by the Dutch government, state company, to mine coal reserves in the southern province of Limburg. After the Second World War, post-1945, DSM diversified into bulk chemicals and petrochemicals, and the company's evolution has continued unabated after DSM closed the last coal mine in the early 70s. But then in the past 20 years, DSM transformed once again as the company began to focus more on creating science-based solutions in health, nutrition, and sustainable living. Or let's have a look at Signify, which is formerly known as Philips Lighting, which already became a carbon neutral company right now, 2021. They have achieved 100% renewable electricity, will celebrate ambitious milestones on sustainable revenues, safety, supplier sustainability, and zero waste to landfill at the end of this very year. A third company, Heineken, since 2008, has reduced carbon emissions per hectoliter in its breweries by more than 50%. I was made to understand that in 2018, Heineken committed to considerably increase renewable energy and production, including renewable electricity, solar power, wind power, hydro, renewable thermal energy, biogas, waste heat recovery, sustainable biomass. And the company will now raise the bar by aiming for net zero emissions by 2030 for all its production sites. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, within 9 years from now. Lastly, last example, KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines. The company works with academic institutions, works with airline partners and the government on several initiatives to reduce CO2 emissions. So strategies for achieving this include fleet renewal, the use of sustainable aviation fuels, optimizing flight paths and procedures, and the aim for emission-free airports and the adoption of even of alternative transport, such as trains for short distances. So in conclusion, and once again, these companies are not only transforming and innovating because of their share in our collective responsibility to a more sustainable world. It's first and foremost because it pays off. And that's a clear message which we would also like to share with Indonesian private sector. It does pay off. So don't wait with your investments. And yes, the government has a prime responsibility to facilitate the right framework in the Netherlands and in Indonesia. And we need to work together with knowledge institutions as well to make that possible. So I can't wait to hear more about the green activities and the best practices of Dutch and Indonesian companies who will speak here today. And thank you very much for having me here. And I wish you a very successful seminar. Thank you very much.
Ambassador, for sharing your remarks with us and setting the context for today's discussion. Moving on, I'd like to welcome Ibu Sherry Nursalim, who is the co-chair of the Trihita Karana Forum on Blended Finance and Innovation for Better Business, Better World, co-hosted with the Indonesian government. She is also the vice chairman of GITI Group, a diversified group that partners with global brands throughout the Asia Pacific. And on top of that, she is also the chairman of the United Nations Global Initiative Sustainable Development Solutions Network in Southeast Asia. Unfortunately, Ibu Sherry can also stay with us for a brief moment. So without further ado, Ibu Sherry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Lambert and organizers. Each of us is an individual on the same planetary ecosystem, our Mother Earth. Our health in the wake of the pandemic, our planet's health in the wake of human activities are all one. We are united in diversity, Pancasila values. I have been privileged to see how Indonesian government leaders, led by President Jokowi's Onward or Maju cabinet, really work. In this pandemic, Indonesia has worked tirelessly and has won praise from Johns Hopkins as one of the best countries in the world, cutting COVID cases in the face of Delta by 58% in 2 weeks. Jakarta is among one of the safest cities now. Indonesia has set another world record, cited by WRI report as the country that reduced deforestation 4 years in a row, led by our Minister of Environment and Forestry, Bu Siti. Sri Mulyani was elected co-chair of Global Finance Ministers on Climate, having pioneered the first green sukuk bond, blended finance SMI SDG Indonesia 1, on green infrastructure and recently launched SDG bond. I am optimistic Indonesia will again do the impossible on the energy front with your support as businesses on the race to net zero. Indonesia will scale other major value creation reforms from EV to eco products and services and build environment that are climate and business friendly. Today, I wish to talk about Better Business, Better World. It is coined by the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, initiated by a Dutch businessman, a dear friend, Paul Polman. He was then chairman of Unilever, and at the time, the commission was supported by UN and Gates Foundation. He now champions this net positive concept for courageous business leaders like you in this room, who together we can shift the system for our young generation and for our common future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Sherry, for staying with us and also for that call to action for private sector and businesses to take climate action and sustainability steps. Before moving on to the discussion, I've been told just now that more than 1,000 people registered for this event, coming from 36 countries. So not only Indonesia and Netherlands, but even places such as Pakistan, Ethiopia, Fiji, Switzerland, even Slovenia. I want to greet all of our attendees today, and I want to remind them to don't forget to submit your questions in the YouTube live chat room, because later on we'll have the opportunity to deliver your questions to the panelists in the session. Moving on, now I will be introducing our moderator for today, Dr. Dino Patijalal, who is the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, or FPCI. FPCI is currently the largest foreign policy group in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, And previously, Dr. Jalal was the presidential spokesperson, former Indonesian ambassador to the United States, and deputy foreign minister. Currently, he also serves as the chairman of the board at World Resources Institute, Indonesia. Without further ado, I'll pass over the mic to Dr. Jalal.
Thank you, Esther. And thank you also to Ambassador Lambert, Grains, and Cherry Nursalim for your inspiring remarks. And I want to also thank the Dutch Embassy for working with us in organizing this event. And Holland has become one of my favorite countries now because they have announced a net zero emission target for 2050, and they have recently raised their 2030 reduction target to 55%. So very progressive, and I'm very pleased to be working with them in this event. So today we're going to be discussing the best practices in climate action and sustainability. And we have 4 great speakers with us today. And let me introduce one by one. We have Neneng Gunadi. She has 30 years of business experience and now is driving Grab in Indonesia. And before Grab, she led Accenture business in Indonesia. She was country managing director for 5 years, and she was with the company for almost 30 decades. And as you know, Grab is now Southeast Asia's largest mobile technology company that connects millions of consumers to millions of drivers, merchants, and businesses. So they're really in the midst of great efforts to address access inequality, outdated infrastructure, and income disparity. Hi, Neneng, how are you? I know you're in the US, right? So I don't know what time it is there. It must be midnight or close to midnight, but thank you for staying up late for us. Yeah. Next, we have Rami Hajar, CEO of Signify Southeast Asia. He's an experienced business leader across multiple regions with 20 years of professional experience and vast knowledge in technology. As leader of Signify Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, sustainability has been his primary focus, and Signify has successfully led the transition to LED and connected lighting under Philips brand, as well as bringing in solar lighting and first in the industry 3D printed luminaries to the region, which ensures the adoption of circular economy. Hi Rami, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you. Right. And we have Aziz Arman, who is the Vice President Director and Group CEO of PT Indica Energy. This is Indonesian company, a rare Indonesian company that has committed to a net zero carbon emission goal by 2050, and they did this since April 2020. Right? Aziz joined the company in 2007, and he's had more than 10 years experience in corporate finance and investment. He was also an associate at JP Morgan Chase, and recently he was appointed as vice chairman of Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia. Welcome, Pak Aziz. It's good to see you. Right. Yeah, I actually been to your office once, so I think we had a good chat then. Yeah. Next we have Ika Noveira, Corporate Affairs Director of PT Multi Bintang Indonesia, Heineken. I hope you're sober this afternoon. Ika has more than 15 years of professional experience across consulting, financial, and FMCG sectors. And at Multi Bintang, she has been driving multi-stakeholders efforts between government, NGOs, communities, and media to accelerate the company's bold sustainability agenda and initiatives. Ika is also chairwoman of GIMI, which is the Indonesian Brewers Association, and she drives beer industry initiatives in advocating responsible consumption. So welcome all of you, and thank you for joining this discussion. And I'm glad to hear Ambassador Lambert said earlier that companies need to understand that going green is not just a conscientious decision. It's actually a money decision. You actually make money and create jobs and produce more growth with sustainability. And in my view, I think Indonesian companies would find out soon that, or sooner or later, that this is the next big thing. Going green, going to net zero. Just the way we found out that globalization was going to be a big thing when it came about in the 60s, except that we caught on quite late to it, right? So it's better to catch the wind early rather than catching it while everybody will catch on to this trend in the coming years. So let me start with the first question. The COP26 is around the corner, the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow. Everybody is excited for this. And the net zero race is on, and it's a good race, and I hope everybody wins. What do you think is the role of businesses, private sector, against this background? And why do you think Indonesia and Netherlands are important actors in this race for climate action? Does anybody want to pick up that question? Maybe Neneng, I'll start with you.
Okay, sure. I guess just so you know, that GRAB mission is to drive Southeast Asia forward by creating economic empowerment for everyone. We have double bottom line. This means we aim to simultaneously deliver financial performance and make a positive social impact while mitigating our environmental footprint. In June, we launched our first ESG report 2020 and GRAB first annual outlining the company commitment to create socio-economic empowerment, protect the environment, and provide performance strong finances across Southeast Asia. And this report focuses on our initiative in, number one, reducing our carbon footprint. Number two, accelerating the electric vehicle adoption. And number three is increased commitment to achieve high transparency and accountability. And these new initiatives to reduce GRAB's carbon footprint and the impact of existing programs are highlighted in the GRAB First ESG report. And the report covers key material topics in accordance with the global reporting initiative standards, such as socio-economic impact, diversity and inclusion, as well as greenhouse gas emission and platform safety. Some of the highlights include, I'm very, very proud of this. We reduced waste of 380 million set of single-use plastic cutlery, more than $200 million invested into electric and hybrid vehicle for GRAB rental since 2016. And today, almost 1 in 3 vehicles providing ride-hailing services on GRAB in Singapore are electric or hybrid vehicles. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, we are very proud as well that we are the largest electric vehicle operator with 7,500 units. So as part of its commitment towards the sustainability business operation under GRAB for Good, GRAB has been releasing several initiatives under what we call Langkah Hijau campaign since 2019. So I guess that's my answer, my long answer to your question.
Want to jump in? I guess the question is also, do you feel that you're still in a minority now? Because in Indonesia, for example, Pak Aziz, I'm sorry, you're minority. There are not too many companies that have announced net zero targets, right? So I guess, So the question is, what can businesses do to awaken the passion for net zero race, which in my view has not happened yet. That passion has not engulfed us as yet. Yeah. Anybody want to comment on that?
Let me take it, Pak Dino, Your Excellency, Ambassador Lambert, and fellow panelists and all distinguished participants. Well, Indica Energy is a investment holding company, right, with portfolio in a number of assets, centering on energy sectors, primarily in the coal sectors, actually, right? So, triggered by the intention to stabilize the operational and financial performances due to the resulted from this fluctuation in the commodity prices, we are going to explore further our involvement in the form of investment in the non-coal sectors. And when we started doing so to stabilize our performances, we come into a junctures that stabilization only is not enough. It must be sustainable. So then we come back to the drawing board, really discussing about what sort of portfolio Indica Energy should have in the future to ensure the sustainability of the company. So we have commenced our initiative to diversify, to transform our portfolio with a certain target of balanced contribution from coal and non-coal sector by 2025. And we have started investing in non-coal sectors in the past 2 years, in the logistics, in the non-coal mining, in the digital and technology, in the nature-based solution sectors, right? With a view that those new invested sectors could start or could contribute a 50% of the revenue by the 2025. However, that would not be enough because investing only will not be enough. So what we have done also is divesting our asset. So any asset in the coal sectors or coal-related sectors, we have started to divest the asset. And about 2 months ago, we announced a transactions really to let go our 51% ownership in the coal logistic or transportation company. So these two initiatives will drive Indica Energy. That's number one. Number two, though, diversification is not enough. What we are trying to do also to decarbonize our operation, even in the existing asset. So we have installed really the solar PV facilities in our coal mine operation, and so converting the fossil fuel-based power generation to a more sustainable or more environmentally friendly sources. So we have invested about 500 kilowatt peak, and then we are in the process of installing or constructing another 1 megawatt peak at our mine site. And we are in the process of studying to convert our major port and major facilities of about 15 megawatt to be converted into a more environmentally friendly source of power. So that's number one. Number two, the nature-based solution, right? This is very interesting, and it covers the forest area surrounding our mine site. We are currently managing more than 125,000 hectares of forest concession surrounding our mine site, and we are committed to managing it in a more sustainable way. But certainly it will require support from the surrounding communities, because the surrounding communities have been living by the coal mining sort of operation, right? So the training, the awareness, the campaign, but again, we have to provide living to them. So then we are currently developing what we call energy forest development in our forest concession. So yes, this is a new thing, Pak Dino and Your Excellency, but we at the Indica Energy, I think we like to be part of a global citizen, right? In addition to committing for 50% revenue by 2035 from non-coal sectors, we are also committing to reach net zero emission by 2050. And we have defined the metrics, and we have defined as well the preliminary or the intermediate target to achieve that 2050 emission.
Thank you.
So that's
Thank you,
for me the introduction, Pak Dino. I'll be very happy to have a further discussion later.
Thank you. And I just want to commend, those are bold moves to start divesting from coal, especially because the price of coal is very high now, right?
So that's even more challenging for me, for us.
Yeah, so very, very bold moves, yeah. And later on, I want to ask you more about that. How do your peers in the coal industry react to this, yeah? But now I want to move to Rami Hajar. And Rami, your company, Signify, is already carbon neutral. I find that quite amazing. And you also achieve 100% renewable electricity. So, the question is, how did you do this? I find this quite inspiring. And what challenges were present, and how did you overcome it? Yeah.
Sure, Doctor. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. For us, to be frank with you, as a company, we decided, to be a bit on the driving seat and to try as much as possible to role model and walk the talk. So the starting point for us was to really embed it in our purpose and vision. So we do have it in our purpose that we want to, always unlock what we call extraordinary potential of light for a better world and brighter life. So the better world part of our purpose translates into the sustainability aspect, which is usually under two things: climate action and circular economy. So we took it, but this also got translated into very specific strategic pillar. We have 5 pillars. One of them is called growth for sustainability. And this by itself translates into many strategic actions and initiatives that every one of us, employees across the world, follow up on. So the idea is that how to also then walk the talk. So that was a nice talk, but then how to walk the talk. We took the challenge, and indeed, you're right, we're happy to be now fully carbon neutral already. 0 waste to landfill, 100% renewable electricity. This year we'll have also 0 plastic in our packaging as well. Lots of things happened to put us there. We worked a lot on our manufacturing side of the business. We worked a lot on the emissions there. We worked also on every single detail, like traveling, like our logistics, sea freight versus air freight, our office footprint as well, HVAC, lighting, of course, we are a lighting company. So it takes a lot of actions to be there. But we also, along the way, we ensure that we don't only work on ourselves, but we also try to influence the ecosystem around us. For instance, if you look at our value chain and at our suppliers, we also do assess our suppliers. We have, KPIs where we also rank them and assess them based on their sustainability initiatives and indexes as well. And we work obviously with the suppliers, with the partners in the value chain that share also the same vision as us. But that was until today. Going forward now, the new challenge will be, because you told me what are the challenges. Now, so what's next? When you set such an ambitious goal, you achieve it already now, and then what's next? So what's next for us is to commit to the Paris Agreement, but do it much faster. By 2031, the idea is, how to reach this 1.5 degree commitment from Paris Agreement. For us, we're going to do it by 2025. So that's now our next challenge, that the one that we're working on. Of course, this goes into several axes: maintaining carbon neutrality, further reduction of carbon footprint. Also, we are working on increasing our climate action revenues, we call them. So this is also comes with a business aspect of it as well, to 72%, which is also, as His Excellency said, there's a competitive advantage in being sustainable, and that's also we're also working on it rigorously. We will double also our circular economy as well revenue to 32%. We're going to continue our zero waste policy. We will work also on our suppliers. So many actions. I can talk for a long while about it. Maybe later on I can go into the details. While walking the talk, it's also very important to see, because you mentioned in your first question Indonesia as well, and where does it sit or fit in our strategy. We're also walking the talk in Indonesia. Besides being carbon neutral, we also indeed opened our first in the region, across industry, there's nobody else that has done it, 3D factory for lighting, which is quite unique, I would say, in Indonesia. This is also to try to drive further down carbon emissions with our customers, and also drives the sustainability aspect. So again, I tried to summarize in a nutshell, but still, I would say the challenge is on, and whenever we achieve something, we always bring in a new challenge to do.
Now I would like to ask Ibu Ika from PT Multi Bintang Indonesia,
Yeah.
Which is part of Heineken, by the way.
Right.
Look, you've been trying to reduce the carbon footprint since 2008. And now your company has raised the bar, aiming for net zero emission by 2030, which is at the end of this decade. Yeah. How do you intend to achieve this ambition, Ika? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Dino. A quick introductions about who is Multi Bintang Indonesia, and you mentioned rightfully about Heineken. We are probably one of the youngest company in the panel. This year, exactly in November, we are going to be, Multi Bintang Indonesia will be turning 90. Definitely one of the reasons why we get into this, we want to future-proof our business for the next 90 years. If we've been growing for this long together with the country, and our sustainability journey has started a while back. And if some of you may have known that we are the producers of Indonesia's iconic Bir Bintang. We produce also Heineken, and then another variety of non-alcoholic beverages. And as you probably have heard recently, Greta Thunberg said that our house is on fire. We took it to our heart, and we know that we need to accelerate, and we set really much bolder targets and ambition, and we act on it. How we do it, we look into different aspects of our business. You call it entire value chain from cradle to grave. In our industry, we call it from barley to bar. And for us, we have to think circular. So every single resources that we spend, even our byproducts, should be repurposed and cannot be wasted. And we look into how we source our raw material sustainably, and we set really high commitment on this net zero carbon by 2023 in our productions. And we actually made, back in 2019, Multi Bintang made a public pledge that we want to reach 100% renewable energy by 2025. And how we do it, we use biomass, solar panel is in the pipeline, and where we are about, I think about 38%, and the remaining, how we're gonna reach that? It's a challenge, it's still a journey for us, because we talk about there's a technology element, the technology aspect to it, there's a regulation aspect to it. So yeah, we are working with multiple different stakeholders. We sit down with a lot of other FMCGs who share the same, have commonalities in terms of targets, bold ambitions, and how we're going to do it. So especially, we also talk a lot with the government, how we can collaborate together, how we can accelerate this. We have targets, the government also have targets in terms of renewable energy, and how we can make sure that, you know, we all achieve this, the common goal, and accelerate, and also answer to Greta on what she's been telling all of us in the media, and also in different global stages, and act together. And I think as private sector, as companies, we can do that, but we can't do that alone, and we need to do it collectively, and only collective actions can make things go faster. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to ask Neneng. Again, I hope you've taken a lot of coffee in the United States to stay up this late. Neneng, your drivers, your Grab drivers and motorcycles, they emit tons of emissions, and I'm sure you're losing sleep over this. How is Grab going to offset the carbons that are produced by your drivers? And I understand that you are going to release a net zero emissions goal next year. What can we expect from that? Yeah, please, Nan.
Well, okay, thanks. Yes, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here, but I'm still awake, so it's okay. I guess we want to take part of the sustainable environment, right? As I mentioned, we have, in Indonesia, we have 3 steps. One is carbon offsetting, with, and then a second is electric vehicle. Number 3 is recycle. You're asking about the, what you call, how, you know, we do the carbon offsetting. Number 1, we utilize our digital platform. We announced this carbon offsetting with Grab initiative. We launched a new feature. So the carbon offsetting opt-in for consumer to product integration embedded in Grab transportation vertical. So we reached phase 2, where integrated carbon offset opt-in is embedded in pre-booking flow. So it's a voluntary contribution that goes towards planting trees. By opting in, there'll be an additional 500 rupiah for each car ride and 200 rupiah for each bike ride. And the amount stays the same regardless of the fare. That is phase 2. Phase 3, we will make sure that whatever the kilometer the person goes from one point to another point, there is a automatic calculation for carbon offset. How much is that? And the money goes directly to tree planting. The first gonna be a partnership with Jakarta provincial government. Why? Because there are many Grab car and Grab bike in Jakarta. So we want to make sure that we offset with planting the trees. So that's for carbon offsetting. We also make sure that we invest a lot in developing the electric vehicle ecosystem. As I mentioned, in Indonesia, I think we are the first and the largest EV car and bike that we are currently operate, and we will still gonna be actually add more. So we are going to focus this year and next year definitely for what you call motorbike electric vehicle, so that the driver can renting EV for delivery food, delivery also for passenger. In this case, we reduce the carbon, right? if you really think about it. So that's our plan, and it's gonna be by 2025, it's gonna be 25,000 number of vehicle at least. So that's our plan. And for example, also on electric vehicle, we actually partner with a local homegrown manufacturer such as Gesitz and Salis, and with also multinational brands such as Hyundai, Honda, VR, as well as Kimco. We also work together B2B with Lazada Logistics to operationalize the two wheels EV as their logistic fleets to deliver packages to Lazada consumer in Jabodetabek. We're also working with Sagari and PT POS, our state-owned enterprise, to use this model in their logistic operations. So Mr. Ambassador and Dino, if you really think about it, Indonesian company is already aware and contribute to this, and they really focus on this as well. And on the infrastructure itself, we work closely with Pertamina, the state-owned enterprise, for the charging station and in Rawa Bogor. And then we also have electric vehicle battery swapping station with Honda Panasonic joint venture, collaborating with PLN in Bali. We have 7 locations, 7 cabinet and 30 units. And we also have electric vehicle battery swapping in Jakarta, collaborating with PLN as well, and also Kimco in 4 locations, 6 cabinet and 100 unit Kimco EV bikes. So that's for all the transportation that you're talking about. We are also having something for the recycle, but okay.
Thank you, thank you. Now, let me ask this question to all of you. You know, Ambassador Lambert mentioned something quite interesting, which is if you go green, you create more jobs and make more money, right? You know, I've had this conversation with some Indonesian companies, and their response is first, it may be true in the US or in Europe, but in Indonesia, it's just too much burden and too much risk, right? And may not necessarily be true, right? What is your answer to them? What would you say to companies who say that green growth doesn't produce more jobs and more profit? Yeah. Anyone?
If I can step
yes.
in. Oh.
I see. Rami, please.
Sure. Yeah, I understand the first reaction of some companies when they react this way, and I think here we are trying also talking to our customers and talking also to other stakeholders to really show what has happened and how actually it helped us grow and create jobs. So we need to be aware that the world is changing, right? And we have more and more customers because we look at, in our business, we look at customers. So customers are changing. Sustainability is gaining speed. So from business perspective, you will have more and more customers looking at sustainability very rigorously. We also have legislations that are also changing, maybe at different rates, and maybe probably this is something that will be discussed even more in the second session today, but it's also happening as we speak. If I look at ourselves as a company and just using some examples, we talk about climate action revenues. We want to take it to 72%. But then let me give some examples, to be a bit more specific, how these climate action revenues are already helping us today. And if we were just watching, we would have missed completely the game. So I'll start with something very basic, which is energy efficient lighting, LED. We were very happy in terms of sales before with non-efficient lighting. But then when we drove towards energy efficient lighting, and the world may be ahead of the industry or ahead of the market when customers didn't back then yet fully understand the impact, or energy efficiency was not top of mind. Today, it constitutes the vast majority of our sales, energy efficient lighting. Then let us link it to Indonesia. This also applied to Indonesia as well. On top of it, we talk about connected lighting, which can bring energy saving up to 80%. Look at Jakarta. Jakarta has installed connected street lighting. It's actually one of the biggest examples globally of a city that took an action there and moved to smart lighting, which would save up to even 80% energy as well. So again, for us, that was also driving it and providing for us some, I would say, along the way, good business, of course. We talk about solar energy. We talk about solar lighting for us. We talk about 3D printing. Yes, we were a bit more progressive when we went now into 3D printing. Hopefully the same will happen as well. Well, I hear the dear panelists from also multi-bintang talking about circular economy, for instance. I'm sure that maybe for lighting, they will probably go for also circular economy, 3D. That's a potential customer just right there in front of me sitting. Same applies to many other customers as well. So as such, we need to be very much aware that if we don't ride the wave, we will miss out. And sustainability is happening, whether we like it or not. So, and it brings also revenue, and it brings jobs and sustainable growth for us. So these are concrete examples I love to share as well with others to see that seeing sometimes is believing.
Anyone else want to add to
Dino,
that?
if I may add,
please,
if
please,
that's
Ika.
okay, just to add on what Remy has just shared. Our observation, we are one of the oldest public listed company, Multibintang, and recently, actually in the past few years, our investors, the financial analysts, the banks, they've been asking about our plans, how we're going to reduce our carbon footprints, and what are our investment on renewable energy, and also other sustainability initiatives. This is actually linked to lending that we get from financial sectors. Then it has a ripple effect on how the ability of companies, any companies in Indonesia, to grow. Meaning grow, you can invest further to the country and create more jobs. And even consumers, we talk about consumers, our data consumers, people who drinks our beer, and they ask how we can contribute, how we can return our bottle, because by the way, we have managed to collect 100% of our bottle, and they are returnable. And in our exchange, another instance, quite recently, another exchange with other FMCGs, we have a discussion how we can help the Indonesian government to become more competitive in this area. Why? Because they compare with other countries, our neighboring countries, in terms of, for instance, renewable energy regulations. Is Indonesia friendly? And how we can accelerate this. So, for instance, in Vietnam, they have been liberalizing renewable energy policies, and they have quite a very ambitious target to reach that. And therefore, how we as companies collectively in Indonesia also help the government on that front. And quite interestingly, on the point about clean energy, climate change, climate crisis, I think we believe that the best way to fight climate change is to prevent the carbon emission itself. Therefore, our focus in us, I think probably similar to Signify, is we reduce non-renewable energy, that's for sure, becoming much more efficient. We will not focus so much on offsetting. Why? Because we want to contribute. We want to move forward completely to clean energy. We want to be, at some point, every single bir bintang that you drink in this country powered by the sun, powered by clean energy. So that would be my point to get across, Pa. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to move back to Pa Aziz, yeah. And before you answer, I also want your comment, because you're an interesting character, a coal company that is trying to move away from coal, right? And as you know, Indonesia's climate future depends on what happens to the coal companies, because our energy sector is still very much dependent on coal. And I've talked to some friends who own coal industries, and they said they're also planning to move away, but this is still minority, right? So again, I would love to get your take on do you think Indonesian coal community will begin to move away from that industry? And what would be the best way to accelerate that process?
Well, I guess this sustainability is an imperative for coal companies, right? Just for, I guess I would like to take what Mr. Ambassador Lambert said earlier about the cost of fund. We as a publicly listed company, we are also exposed, or we are also exposed to the international financing market, be it the bank markets or bond markets, right? And the last deal we were in the market was last October. And it wasn't about the coal sector, it wasn't about the coal prices, but it was more about ESG roadmap. And how we as a company transform ourselves. And yes, we presented our case, but again, you know, it still commanded a premium. So with that, is actually, we have a very strong and real business case to pursue from just the perspective of cost of fund. So that is from there, Pak Dino, that I understand some of the fellow coal producers are exploring the same sort of intention as well. Certainly, the challenges are different, and the starting point are different, right? For example, in our case, we would like to invest in a more non-coal sectors, decarbonizing our operation. Other companies is going into more sort of water waste management, that sort of stuff, right? But I think the spirit or the big narrative, so to speak, remain the same, right? So, but again, energy transition is as challenging as portfolio transformation from our perspective, right? It would require time, but certainly it would need a commitment. So I believe we have shown a good start, but I guess it still need to continue in terms of committing the strategy. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask this question to each one of you, and anyone who want to answer, please do. All of you have ambitious net zero commitments, right? You feel it in your heart, in your company's business plans, and so on. Do you fear that even though many companies are joining the net zero race, that you will not have enough scale to deliver an effective emission reduction? In other words, you do all your best, but there are enough companies out there who are just not doing their best, and in the end, we will not be getting the 1.5 degree world that we aspire to. So, do you worry about that? Yeah. Anyone, please?
Well, I believe, I guess, being a member, right, of the global citizen and the Indonesian citizen, we have our responsibility, right, to do it. And certainly, we in the Indica Energy have its responsibility to Indica Energy and to the personal interest, right? And going concern of Indica Energy will be determined by how Indica Energy can transform itself. So it is, again, what I said earlier, it is an imperative And I'm worried that we wouldn't be able to do so. I'm not worried about worry about the global, but I guess I'm more worried about how we as a corporate, right, as a whole, together with all the stakeholders, could achieve or could reach the ambition, from my perspective.
Okay. Anyone else want to add? Yeah, Rami, please. It's a fair question, isn't it?
It is a good question. It's a nice question, to be frank with you. From my perspective, but again, it might have a personal answer. Good to be paranoid and good to be fearful when it comes to climate action. There's no downside. I would say yes. There will always be the fear that what other people are doing, what other companies are doing. I think what we can control is ourselves and also the ecosystem around us. Ecosystem around us is also a big part of it as well. So again, as a company, while we're working on ourselves, we need to also make this handshake with our supply chain partners, our value chain partners, all across the value chain. If every company takes the lead in doing so, then the impact will be much bigger than your own self or your own company, and the trickle-down effect will be substantial. So yes, the fear is there, but this is good fear, I would say, fear that drives action, and we are always paranoid about it, but we are also optimistic that if we did it, also others will follow and will do it. And this again takes me to the next session. Probably there will always be the role of the government in this, to ensure that legislations as well, drive it and facilitate this direction too.
Yeah, thank you for, and yes, Ibu Neneng, please.
Okay. I think I agree with Rami, right? Because at the end of the day, right, we as a company, right, for example, like Grab, we can influence the whole entire value chain in Grab, because we know, like, for example, we know that our consumer really care about carbon offsetting, and we are very happy. And our driver partner also care about it. They love it. 81% of our driver partner who try the EV, they love it because it's quiet and it's cost efficient. So it's great, right? And our merchant partner also now focus on that as well. And then on top of that, I agree that the role of government is very, very important. But at least I can see like the state-owned enterprise like Pertamina and PLN really care and really wants to work together as one team. So I think we have to be optimistic, because we can influence, we can create domino effect for all Indonesian society, which I think I can see the development from like 2-3 years ago and now is improving substantially. So I'm very optimistic. I know there is still a fear, but I think it's a good paranoia, right? Yeah. So I'm optimistic.
Okay, maybe one round question that I'd like to get your take on, which is, okay, you have net zero strategies, ambitious emission reduction strategies, but what do you say to companies that believe, hey, the government policies are not there to be aligned with our efforts? And they pretend that they would prefer to wait for the right policies and laws to be in place before moving in that direction, whereas other companies say, well, let's not wait, let's just move on, even in the absence of a supportive government policies for this. Yeah. So what do you say to those companies who say, let's just wait for government policies. Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
if
Ika,
I can
please.
step in. Actually, we came across quite a number of companies, small, large, including the both international and also local. And they do care, and we see that's quite a big bulk of them growing. So I tend to be on the optimistic side. All of us here, can be the first mover, and we will get the rest who wants to be the first mover to become the pilot, test us to be the pilot. For instance, recently we launched an initiative, Share Mutual Aspirations, facilitated by Clean Energy Investment Accelerator. We sit down with the government, and that includes the likes like Amazon, some of the big companies, and we want to, sit on the table and then make that happen. And these big companies are willing to, make things happen. We want to make things happen despite all of our sizes. So, and people will watch, people will see the changes that happen, and this is unstoppable, I think. This will not stop, regardless of the regulations. I think the government will also see. I think there's all good intention. The government has good intention. I think it's just about accelerating and how we can collectively together accelerate that and be part of the solutions for this planet. Yeah.
Yes. Anyone else want to comment on that? Pa Aziz, do you think the government should give more incentives for renewable energy? Because I think the players in the renewable energy all say that there's not enough incentives for us to beat fossil fuel, right? What do you think about that? Yeah.
Well, I believe, if incentive is the next important point, but we don't see a significant, big, large project yet, not to mention about incentive, right, in the space of renewable energy. Yes, other than what we saw like a month ago about the Cirata, the Masdar investment with the state-owned enterprises. But other than that, we will still looking forward to seeing the revised renewable energy law, right, which has been in the parliament for quite some time, and the new energy plan, right? The energy mix plan, which had missed last year. So the industry have been waiting for that. To move forward. But besides that, I guess what we in Indica Energy are actively looking for areas to convert or whatever in terms of converting to more renewable, more green, and also participating in the potential investment to collaborate with potential clients in terms of converting their power sources to more environmentally friendly sources.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, you mentioned Masdar. That's an interesting example because it's so obvious we need solar energy, but I believe they had such a hard time negotiating. It took Pak Luhut to intervene to get the right tariffs for solar for that to happen, right? Which means what? The climate consciousness has not been really strongly instilled in the Indonesian government, so that even Pak Luhut had to intervene to make sure that the deal went through rightly. Anyone else want to add? Yeah. By the way, I'm interested in what Ika said. I just want to know if others want to pick up on it. Climate consumerism or green consumerism. Do you think that this is here to stay and it will grow, or this is a temporary thing? Yeah. Because in Indonesia, I'm seeing it. But it's not mainstream as yet, green consumerism, right? But what is your take on this? Is this going to be the main trend in Indonesian consumerism? Yeah. Anyone? Yeah, Neneng, please.
I guess If I see on what's going on the trend, because the trend for green consumerism, I think is going up, and plus the new generation, they really concerned about it, and they are the one who will also drive this. It's not only in Indonesia, but it's everywhere in the world, right? So I think it's gonna be the trend moving forward, and I think it's great, right? So, yeah,
Do you think,
and
do you think elections in 2024, climate and environment will be a big issue, or not so?
that's a tough question
I
that
know.
probably
I would love to
cannot
get your answer.
comment.
Yeah.
There's a good one, buddy. Now.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. We're trying to make
Yeah.
it an elections issue, right? So because whatever you do, things will move only will move substantially if government policies create the direction, right? And that's where resources will be allocated. A whole bunch of activities will be initiated once the right policies are there. And so we hope we'll get to that point. So sorry, Pak Aziz, you wanted to add something? Yeah.
No, I just want to add now that the 2024 election, we will see different sort of demographic, right, of the voters. And I believe, because when I talk about coal industry at my dining table, right, the kids, although their study are funded by that, right, they're still looking at, rolling their eyes, that kind of stuff. So as Ibu Neneng said earlier, the trend is very positive toward sustainability. So I don't know how influenced they are in the election 24, but I believe that would increase in terms of the proportion. So yeah, it's the trend right now.
Yes.
I guess what we need is to have more campaign domestically, right?
Yes. Well, let's hope so. We've now come to the public questions. So now that's the fun part, and I'm going to give the microphone to Esther, who will moderate the questions from our viewers. Esther, please.
Moderating that discussion. Certainly, there's a lot of aspects that all of our attendees wants to dig more. So let me just jump in straight to the first question. This comes from Devi Nugraha, who's a corporate communications officer at Procter & Gamble. This relates earlier to some point that has been mentioned, which is, what's your point of view on greenwashing campaign? And how is your company tangible actions try to prevent this kind of perception in your consumer space and also just the public generally? So I welcome any of you to answer these questions.
I can go with that. It's interesting questions, and I think today's consumer, especially the younger generations, we talk about Y and Z, they have immense access to any kind of information, including every single thing that we do as a company. So I suppose greenwashing is something that the company, any companies, any consumer goods companies, any kind of companies need to be very mindful of, be very careful in what claims you make. If you're not there yet, say you're not there yet. Better say you are in a journey, because I know it's sometimes quite easily, it's tempted for us to make those big claims in order to grab attention. Therefore, I suppose, I think all of us, it's part of being responsible in what claims we make. And I think that's super important. I think being authentic, being very honest with where we are, I think that would be the key. And then consumers will believe you. And talk about the journey, I think that's probably the most important thing to do.
Thanks, Iwika. So you mentioned transparency is really critical, rather than greenwashing your consumers and then giving a mistrust towards them. So does anybody else want to comment on that before we move on to the next question?
Yes.
Yes.
I think if it would be to it would be unfair if we jump into conclusion just because of one transaction, right? So, and one time. So what we need to do is really, I mean, to show is the consistency in the journey, right? What the journey is, and what sort of milestone during the journeys, and that's is I don't want to be judgmental in that regard.
Thank you, Pak Aziz. Moving
And
on, there's... yes, Rami, go ahead.
It's a very good question, and at the end, I mean, to put it in simple terms, besides what you do, it also always comes back to the values. And so whether we talk about, for instance, the previous question from the, is it, what about the trend, new generation picking it up, also talking about greenwashing? I think we also have a role to play in making sure that to make it sustainable, we need to talk about values, and we need to also, one is, of course, our social responsibility as a corporation, but also take it to our kids, to our kids in school as well, to make it really one dimension that takes all the importance in ensuring that when we talk about sustainability, like any other thing as well, it also, at the base of it, there's always integrity as well. So in a way, that one thing called integrity and values will not only fight greenwashing and limit it, hopefully, but also will help in across multiple aspects as well.
Thank you, Rami. Ibu Neneng, do you want to add to that?
Sorry. Yeah, I guess I think they cover everything. Just want to reiterate, transparency, integrity is very, very important. And guess what? Right now, everything is transparent. People will know everything. You cannot hide anymore.
Yeah.
So, I agree that values and principle is important, and laying out the journey for each and every company, and just be transparent, because no matter what, you cannot hide anything. If you promise something, it's there. You just have to execute it and share everything with everybody, because with technology, you can't hide.
Thank you for all the answers. Moving on, there's a question from Mr. Bart, who's the Asia Director of MDF Management. Mr. Bart asks, we usually assist companies in increasing their social impact. However, very often companies resort to a philanthropic approach rather than real sustainability. So what entry points or starting points can you suggest for a trajectory that would really sustainably benefit companies and also the society and environment? So to repeat the question, Mr. Bart was asking, how do we make sure that companies are actually moving towards sustainability as opposed to just CSR, or also, using a philanthropic approach?
I can help to answer that.
Please, Ibu.
I think it's very important for companies to first understand your entire business value chain. Start from yourself first, so therefore your operations from cradle to grave. Understanding that, and then see what are the minimal improvement from energy efficiency, from your raw materials, how you source your materials and all that. And I think by understanding yourself and understanding your community surrounded, I think that's probably the first that needs to happen. However, this requires resources. You need people to look into that and really invest time. And also sometimes there's, doing assessment also require there are costs involved. However, by having this proper mapping of understanding of how you operate, then it will help you to understand which area you can develop. And to set a very ambitious goal like what we all here have set as a company takes that journey. And I think if we can start from there and also talk with many of us, talk with many communities. There's a huge sustainability communities in Indonesia already established, and have that conversation and see where you can start. And there is no specific entry points. You can make changes in how much water you use and how you source your water. Talk to your PDAM if you source your water from PDAM and all that. So I think there's so much opportunity where you can make the first move, and it's not possible.
Thank you, Eureka. There is a question right now from Meryl, who's a student studying at the University of the Philippines. And this is an interesting question because recently this topic has become a debate in Indonesia, which is, what are your thoughts on implementing carbon taxes to mitigate carbon emissions? Do you agree that carbon emitting companies shall be held accountable in their operations' negative externalities? So I would like to invite any of the panelists to tackle this question and hopefully hear from all of you. Taking some time to think. Yeah, Pak Aziz, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess carbon tax is a form of giving a penalty, right? So, or is a pricing of your externalities, right? Basically, so but I would agree on that one, pricing the externalities, so that when you're making a business decision, that externalities is priced in the process. Right, but again, at what level, at what supply chain, that needs to be discussed. But also the option of non-carbon product, right? Non-carbon related product, that is also need to be provided as a alternative to the carbon intense product, for example. So all in all, certainly penalty and rewards are going into, I think needs to go hand by hand, and also alternative to the products need to be there as well. So while I am of the supporters of the carbon pricing, right, or externalities pricing, but again, it has to be communicated very well in terms of it's not just a additional source of government revenue, right? So it has to have a context of which why carbon tax would be implemented, basically.
Thank you, Pa, for your answer. Anybody else want to tackle that question?
I can give some comments on that, because
Sure.
we are part of this CAIA with a few other companies, and I think carbon tax is not new. Carbon tax is like in many countries they already apply this. But I think what's important, as Pa Aziz rightly mentioned earlier, what's the intention of the carbon tax? And if it's obviously, yeah, there are aspects of maybe revenue generations for additional income and so on and so forth. But I think for us, Multibintang, I think we see it is a growing trend in different parts of the world, and we are not against it. However, we want to make sure the intention is right, and it's to encourage companies to move to a cleaner energy and to reduce emissions, because the whole point of this carbon tax is to reduce emissions. And in terms of regulations where we are, I think the government is moving to the right directions in terms of they have targets in terms of reducing carbon emissions from non-renewable, and at the same time, the technical regulations that comes with it, it's still in progress. So we are monitoring very closely the development together with other companies who are really concerned about this topic. And again, going back to what are the intentions and how we can make sure that the implementation is good and it's clearly communicated and not become a double taxation for many companies. Yeah.
Thank you, Ika. Ibu Neneng or Parami, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I guess from this is just my individual perspective, right? I would say that from me, why we start, what do we want to achieve? If we want everyone to really care about it, can we start with giving reward instead of penalty, quote unquote, right? Because if it's penalty, it means like, people doing it because otherwise they get penalized. It's not, the motivation is totally different. That is from my perspective. Because if the tax is there, and if the regulation, everything is mature, established, and as Pak Aziz mentioned and Maika mentioned about the overall context, how long it takes for us to get there, right? But I think as a starting point, can we focus on motivate people to do good thing and sustainable? That's from my perspective.
Thank you, Ibu.
Also, I mean, from my side, so in the carbon tax idea is obviously to internalize or make concrete as well an external, somehow hidden cost, right? So that's a big part of the objective of a carbon tax. Without commenting good or bad, but it's very important to understand that it also relates to maturity as well of the environment where we are as well. Because there's also an ecosystem that has to be fully mobilized for it too. It also relates to transparency. It also relates to regulatory authorities being able to do proper supervision. Also relates to values, because tomorrow some of the companies might stop disclosing or might hide now their carbon emissions as well. So you can go into as well many tangents. So without really commenting if it's good or bad, I think it's definitely a good topic to discuss. There's a big ecosystem around it that has to be prepared as well once it is decided to go this way. And that has to be taken for sure into consideration for any government or for any country around the world.
Thank you for all of your questions. We have, so for all of your answers, my apologies. We have another question from Putri Mayangsari, a student from Udayana University, who's asking, how did you overcome your obstacles in balancing climate action in the economic sector, especially in supply chain, while also, handling the COVID-19 crisis? And let me combine that with a question from David Lee, who's a lecturer at Monash University. How should countries balance net zero emissions and the economy, and how should businesses balance between net zero emission and profit? Let me repeat the question again. From Putri, Udayana University, how did you manage to overcome the obstacle in balancing climate action in your supply chain while also handling the COVID-19 crisis?
I can go ahead. So as we said at the beginning of the session, these are not, I mean, profitability and business and sustainability, there are not two things that are contradictory. And we need to be very much, clear about that. On the contrary, these are sources of revenue. So once we go for it, once we build an ecosystem around it, once we invest in this technology that makes sense, these are actually sources of revenue in good times, and these are also sources of revenue in bad times as well that could help you sustain your operation. So I don't see it, to be frank with you, as contradictory. These strategic pillars, at least for us as a company, I spoke about 5, one of them is growth for sustainability. made us go through, sustainably, also from business perspective in the last period as well. Our revenue from climate action actually kept on increasing and going in the right direction, helping us also maintain further our operations. It also did not stop us. Again, using Indonesia as an example, even in the middle of this storm of COVID, we kept on investing. We kept on recruiting. One of these dimensions, the 3D circular economy in Indonesia as well. So, to make it very simple, not contradictory at all. On the contrary, these are things that helped us survive, and they were a good source of revenue.
There you have it. So it's not contradictory, but instead they're both actually complementary, if you will. I have another question, and this is directed to Pa Aziz, but all panelists are welcome to also comment on it. From Amy Chu, a journalist at South China Morning Post. China announced last week at UNGA, a UN General Assembly, that it plans to stop building new coal-fired power plants in other nations. How will that impact on coal companies in Indonesia, including Indica Energy?
Yeah, that's, I guess that's in other companies. PLN itself, well, the government and PLN has stated that it's not gonna have, or it's not gonna issue a new license of a coal-fired power plant. The last, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2017. Certainly, that licenses which were issued then, some of them are still under construction, some of them are on operation, and if that is the case, again, the energy transition will play a big part in that regard. So while PLN government is going into that direction, I said earlier about no new license issue after 2017, which means if everything goes smooth, we are looking at the last sort of power purchase agreement expired toward 2060, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I mean, assuming a certain level of construction period, financing, and all those stuff. So we have less than 40 years really to transition ourselves on how to transition our energy sources from fossil based to more environmentally friendly. Yes, and I understand the government has put some sort of policies like what I said earlier about the renewable energy law and other incentives really in terms of how to boost the more environmentally sources of energy and how that would impact the coal sectors. That's certainly from the volume perspective, the future volume perspective, it would disappear. Right? I mean, if no more coal-fired power plant, no more funding. Right now, that's why we are really on the work with the government in terms of the downstreaming of the coal industry. Right? Coal gasification, coal to methanol, coal to LPG, that sort of stuff are being explored really in terms of how to address the potential impact of disappearing coal demand, for example, if you like.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Aziz. Thank you. I have one last question because unfortunately we're nearing the end of our discussion. And hopefully this question will end our discussion on a good note, which is Marcus, Director of Innovative Media Works, is asking, you know, human participation towards the race to zero is necessary, and your companies reach millions of people. So for each of your respective company, what kind of desired action or result would you like to see from your consumers base from your sustainability and climate action? Perhaps we can start with Ibu Neneng first.
Okay. So as I mentioned, right, a lot of our consumer now care as well about the carbon offsetting, because there are many customer opt in for the carbon offset. That's number one, right? So they're really serious about it. And if you think about it, this create domino effect for the consumer, for the people around the consumer, for the driver. And if you think about it, for the merchant as well, our merchant now also care about it. They don't want to use plastic. And the consumer also say, I don't want to have plastic utensil. So they a lot of plastic waste was safe because of that, right? If you really think about it, these things helps everyone to really care about sustainability. And if you think about it, 95% of our customers, more than 160 million orders, opt out of plastic cutlery. So, you know, this is very good. And they start asking about, can the driver that deliver my food also using EV? Because they really care about it. So hopefully that answered the question.
Definitely. Thank you, Ibu. Do you want to go next? Perhaps Parami? Or Pak Aziz?
I have a...
Or
Yes,
Ibu.
okay, go ahead, Iwika.
It's just very quick, because we have a huge audience from different parts of the world, and we always like to talk with, obviously with different people. And if I can say, just to answer that question, please do contact us. Go to our Instagram, multibintang ID, and we want to hear if you have solutions to accelerate our sustainability effort. We'll be open ears, and we want to collaborate. And if you want to see where we are in terms of our sustainability journey, it's all published on our website. You can go. You've seen the journey that we've got throughout the years, including the latest one about earlier. There was questions about how we deal with the crisis of COVID. It's all in there. You all can see at multibintang.co.id. It's all in there. We want to hear from you. That's how, if I can close this.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice, Ibu. Love the spirit. Go ahead, Pak
Nice,
Aziz.
nice, Iwika. Well, primarily our customers are a B, so we are more in the B2B businesses, right? So the first effort is really how to we show ourselves on how we commit to the sustainability, and then the collaboration with our suppliers, with our subcontractors, with our contractors are all, I think, are the very next step. What we need to do, because for example, our scope 1 emission is relatively small compared to if we talk about the subcontracting, because in the Indonesian coal sector industry, primarily work is done by the subcontractor. So get them involved, collaborate with them. But having said so, I guess I like to, if you don't mind, if we can open up also any potential collaboration with everyone on this call. I think very much open, because I think we need to collaborate to tackle one single problem.
Nice.
Thank you
Pak
very
Aziz.
much.
Thank you. Rami, over to you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, we also operate in both the B2C and B2B world in our lighting dimension. to be frank, from our perspective, we want to share our story, and this is not part of, let's say, an ad, because I can probably now in the short term, if you invest in an advertisement not related to sustainability, maybe probably will get more return. It's not that. It's really sharing our story, being thought leaders, being vocal, like our colleagues or our also other panelists from different companies, really to try to influence and coach others on how to do it and to take the steps as well. Again, on the B2B front and also on the B2C. On the B2C, it's a completely different also ball game as well. So two very different approaches, two very different, I would say, ecosystem, but the underlying factor is one, and we need to work around multiple dimensions, and this is what we're trying to do. But for and foremost, yes, customers is a very important part of the value chain. At least now, the biggest thing we can do is walk the talk. So we are doing it ourselves, and the rest will follow for sure. So that's the starting point. That's the most concrete point, walking the talk. And I'm sure that if everybody does his own share of walking the talk, things will change on its own. Thank you.
There you have it. Well, thank you so much, Rami, for saying that. And that puts our discussion for session 1 to an end. I'd like to thank all the panelists again. Ibu Neneng joining us from the US at this very late hour. Pa Aziz also from Indica. We heard from Ibu Ika as well, Multi Bintang. And then Rami from Signify Southeast Asia about how they become, really transparent and vocal about their climate action and sustainability. And hopefully through this discussion and through this call, other businesses both in Netherlands and Indonesia are also encouraged to take further steps for the planet. I'd like to remind all of our attendees today that this forum is not ending yet. We will be reconvening at 3 p.m. at Jakarta time. That's in 10 minutes for our second session, which is cross-sector collaboration for climate action. We'll be here.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. See you.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you very much to all. One of the best seminars ever. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Saya Mika Tambayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Reza Radian. Saya Chico Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yosi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas.
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
yang modern,
maju,
makmur, sejahtera,
hijau, adil, aman,
bebas korupsi,
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
Bukan separatisme.
Bukan perang nuklir. Bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
pemanasan global,
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
Saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia Emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
Dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
Polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
Hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak,
dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
Dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
The climate is changing, and the impact is getting more severe with each passing year. Global actions to slow climate change are needed to adapt to conditions that are now inevitable. Higher temperatures, rising seas, fiercer storms, more unpredictable rainfall, and acidic oceans. We have and can work together to find solutions for these unprecedented challenges. Concrete actions are needed now. Fortunately, there is overwhelming evidence that the social, economic, and environmental benefits of ambitious climate action outweighs the costs. But we can only adapt and respond effectively by collaborating. Indonesia and the Netherlands are committed to scale up our joint efforts to adapt to climate change. Against this backdrop, the Netherlands hosted the Climate Adaptation Summit on 25 and 26 January. With more than 32 world leaders present, more than 18,000 registrations and 160 side events, the CAS was a big success. Clear commitments were made to collaborate globally and further accelerate adaptation action. Both Indonesia and the Netherlands actively took part in this summit, with our nation's leaders asking for more and concrete ways to cooperate between and within nations to make climate adaptation work for everyone.
KTT ini harus dapat melipat gandakan aksi iklim dunia melalui solidaritas, kolaborasi, dan kepemimpinan kolektif global.
And this action is essential because climate change can be seen and felt all over the world. And also because, as COVID-19 has shown, in order to deal with risks, it's crucial that we show resilience and that we do so together.
Unless we act now, it's game over for global society.
to design and implement policies to prevent further climate change and adapt to the impact of changes already happening, the Netherlands and Indonesia recently organized a Climate Adaptation Summit follow-up event under the wings of our Science and Research Collaboration Program, WINNER.
We need to adapt to a new normal global health landscape and a more extreme climate simultaneously. Indonesia appreciates this opportunity, and we will share implementation successes and announcement on new initiative, partnership, and actions to accelerate adaptation in the summit.
The climate is changing, and the impact is getting more severe with each passing year. Global actions to slow climate change are needed to adapt to conditions that are now inevitable. Higher temperatures, rising seas, fiercer storms, more unpredictable rainfall, and acidic oceans. We have and can work together to find solutions for these unprecedented challenges. Concrete actions are needed now. Fortunately, there is overwhelming evidence that the social, economic, and environmental benefits of ambitious climate action outweighs the costs. But we can only adapt and respond effectively by collaborating. Indonesia and the Netherlands are committed to scale up our joint efforts to adapt to climate change. Against this backdrop, the Netherlands hosted the Climate Adaptation Summit on 25 and 26 January. With more than 32 world leaders present, more than 18,000 registrations and 160 side events, the CAS was a big success. Clear commitments were made to collaborate globally and further accelerate adaptation action. Both Indonesia and the Netherlands actively took part in this summit, with our nation's leaders asking for more and concrete ways to cooperate between and within nations to make climate adaptation work for everyone.
KTT ini harus dapat melipat gandakan aksi iklim dunia melalui solidaritas, kolaborasi, dan kepemimpinan kolektif global.
And this action is essential because climate change can be seen and felt all over the world. And also because, as COVID-19 has shown, in order to deal with risks, it's crucial that we show resilience and that we do so together.
Unless we act now, it's game over for global society.
to design and implement policies to prevent further climate change and adapt to the impact of changes already happening, the Netherlands and Indonesia recently organized a Climate Adaptation Summit follow-up event under the wings of our Science and Research Collaboration Program, WINNER.
We need to adapt to a new normal global health landscape and a more extreme climate simultaneously. Indonesia appreciates this opportunity, and we will share implementation successes and announcement on new initiative, partnership, and actions to accelerate adaptation in the summit.
Good afternoon from Jakarta. I want to greet all of our attendees who have been staying with us since our first session earlier this afternoon, and also want to say hi to anyone who just joined this conversation. My name is Esther. I'm your MC and co-moderator for the day, and welcome to the Dutch and Indonesian private sector engagement in the Race to Zero. We are now at the second session of this forum with the title of Cross-Sector Collaboration for Climate Action. This second session will discuss how the private sector works together with the public sector, the knowledge sector, and also the government to obtain their climate and sustainability goals. We have here with us, I've been told that all throughout the discussion, almost, actually more than 1,000 people registered for this event, and they don't only come just from Indonesia or Netherlands, but also from 32 countries, from places like Ethiopia, Fiji, Nigeria, even Slovenia and Switzerland. So I want to say hello to everybody. Thank you for joining us. And I also want to encourage all of you to participate in the discussion at the YouTube chat room. Feel free to submit your questions, because later on we'll have the opportunity to deliver them to the panelists in this session. And while we are preparing for the discussion, I want to introduce our moderator for the day, Dr. Dino Patijalal. Dr. Dino is the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, which is the largest foreign policy group in the country and also in Southeast Asia. Previously, Dr. Dino was presidential spokesperson, former Indonesian ambassador to the United States, and also deputy foreign minister. Right now, he also serves as the chairman of the board at World Resources Institute Indonesia. Again, thank you for everybody who has joined us in this forum, co-hosted by FPCI and the Netherlands Embassy in Indonesia. And without further ado, I'll pass over the mic to Dr. Dino.
Thank you very much, Esther. And I want to welcome all the viewers who have joined or rejoined this session. The session is on cross-sectoral business collaboration for climate action. And we have four quite inspiring panelists. Let me introduce you to each one of them. Roland Coppens is responsible for managing the Air France KLM Group overall strategy and performance in the Southeast Asia region. Before moving to Singapore in 2020, he was commercial director for Air France KLM Group in Canada and based in Montreal. Air France KLM Group has sustainability as their top priority and has the aim to make the aviation sector more sustainable. Agus Sari has been actively engaging in sustainable development for business in Indonesia. He is the CEO of Landscape Indonesia. He's the co-head of Restoration Advisory Incubation Service and System IQ. And before this, he was CEO of Yayasan Belantara, a $50 million fund to finance landscape conservation and restoration in Indonesia. He's also the senior advisor at UNDP and co-chaired the work program on REDD Plus financing at UNFCCC. So thank you, Bagus. You've done a lot of great work. I'm a big fan of yours. Jason Park, General Manager for Animal Nutrition and Health Business for Indonesia at Royal DSM. That really sounds like an interesting job, Jason. He's been working in the animal industry for 34 years in various locations, such as South Korea, India, and now in Indonesia. And before this, he was in Cargill, Korea, and then he became general manager at Cargill, India. 6 years later, he secured position as general manager at DSM, and now he's been holding his role at the company for more than 7 years. Welcome, Jason. And lastly, we have Yasmin Sagita, Director of Corporate Affairs, Sustainability, and Human Resources at PT Royal Lestari Utama. And she assumed this role in November 2020, so almost a year. And before that, she served as L'Oreal from 2013 to 17 as head of external relations and communications in Indonesia, and then as head of Asia Pacific Communications and Environment Manager based in China. So welcome all of you, and I look forward to good discussions on the topic of today, which is cross-sectoral business collaboration for climate action. Let me begin with the first question. We're gonna see the COP26 in Glasgow soon, and there's a lot of anticipation and excitement. The business groups are rallying in a race to zero, which is a good competition. What role do you think business and private sector play in this global movement towards net zero? And what kind of collaboration do you wish to see among stakeholders? And especially, how do you think Indonesia and Netherlands can contribute to this global efforts? Yeah. Anyone who want to jump in, please do. Yeah. I see Pa Agus, you are the IPCC lead author, so I'm sure you have something to say on this. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Padino. Thank you very much. Yes, COP26 is actually a continuation of the past COP that was actually to design what is called the rule book. Yeah, the rule book for the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And I think 80% of that rule book that is going to be negotiated in Glasgow is going to be how we can manage and organize carbon market globally. I think Indonesia also is in the process of preparing itself regulatorily by putting together a presidential regulation on valuation of the carbon assets, and also it's following regulations, ministerial regulations and others. So that's one. And then the second agenda on the table for COP26 is enhanced ambition. Climate Action Tracker has shown Indonesia being highly insufficient when we're talking about its commitments. But Indonesia is not alone. The whole world is actually highly insufficient. If we are doing what we're doing under the Paris Agreement right now, we need 3 Paris Agreements to achieve the objective of 1.5 degrees Celsius under the Paris Agreement. We need 2 Paris Agreements to achieve the 2 degrees Celsius emission temperature increase under the Paris Agreement, and that's tragic. So what will businesses do? I think collaboratively between Indonesia and the Netherlands, a number of things. Of course, one of which is basically to work together on low carbon technology transfers, low carbon infrastructure development, low carbon trades, ensuring that all the commodities that that are traded between the 2 countries are entirely low carbon. We need to continue working on carbon market development together. I think there are so many aspects in the carbon market that we could continue working on, both in terms of public-private partnership as well as private-to-private, business-to-business partnership. I used to be with probably the largest in the world at the time, carbon asset management company called EcoSecurities, and it did at the time have an office in the Netherlands, and we actually continued collaborating through it, and ensuring that the Dutch commitment in reducing emissions can be met not only through domestic actions within the Netherlands, but also through its investments in carbon initiatives worldwide. And I think those kinds of things can be done. So those are probably a good way to open the discussion. But thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Do others want to jump in? In terms of obviously to achieve global temperature rise below 1.5 or below 2.2 Celsius, we need a massive scale of collaboration between business, governments, and civil society. Are we there yet? And if we're not there yet, what needs to be done to achieve that massive collaboration towards net zero emission?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in.
Please. Yes.
Dino.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's been a long-awaited moment and event, of this COP26. I think I also agree with Pak Agus that the collaborative from all stakeholders is very critical at this stage. Meaning, I think the most important to do right now is to do accelerations, and we need to do it right now. Meaning the stakeholders in this case, not just government, private sector, financiers, bankers, as well as the community and society. The good thing is, I think all stakeholders is fully aware about the urgency, the emergency of this climate change issues. We've seen the extreme weather, all the disasters that we face today in today's world. But I think it's good to have this event as one of the place together and finding solutions for what we face right now.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thanks, first of all, for having a chance to be part of this wonderful event. Based in Singapore, looks like I'm in Amsterdam, but I'm in Singapore covering Southeast Asia, Oceania. First, let's say, great already comments made on the ambition that we have. And it's not an easy one, but the goal towards COP26 is wonderful, and that's a roadmap we need to take. KLM, let's say, has a very long, also unique history with Indonesia. By the way, we have flown the first time to Indonesia in 1924. Why I'm saying it is because there's a reason behind it. The first flight was in 1924, pioneering and testing to see if we could, let's say, achieve and reach Indonesia from the Netherlands and beat the record of a boat, which was in 28 days from Amsterdam back all the way down to Indonesia. By the way, it took 55 days, so it was a bit longer even than the 28 days by boats. The flight did arrive in 1924, but the spirit and what we need is, let's say, test and learn and be pioneers, because there's a roadmap that we need to take, but we also need to test and see how we can, let's say, reach our goals. And it's based on certain plans, but you need to pioneer in that perspective. Sustainability is a must. I think it's everyone's concern. If I look at my own children, I have the responsibility to leave a better planet towards my children and their children. Not only their children, but also, of course, the planet by itself. The ambition and the collaboration that we need, we can find, let's say, joint platforms to work on based on SDGs. So the sustainable development goals that we have, and there's quite a few of them. So we need to make a choice and say, as a company, I can make that difference on these certain SDGs. That's your base for making that difference. That's your base also to work with partners, with governments, with anyone else, including our customers, to see how we can make a better world. And that world is about not only, let's say, to look at the temperature itself, but also look at a sustainable future for a company itself. Thank you for that.
Okay. Jason, you want to add into this? Yes.
Dr. Dino, actually, I had the pre-communication with the embassy guys, and then the Robin, recommended something about, in our here, cross collaboration sector. But since DSM has a very good and very fantastic best practice, how we do the business in all about the climate change. So may I just jump in something about what we do now, other than about cross collaboration subject? Or else I will just wait later, once my time is coming.
Okay, good. In terms of collaboration, I'm sure a lot of companies will say, hey, technology, share your technology, because technology is just the critical factor determining the ability to reduce emissions. From the standpoint of companies, how much will that hinder collaboration or promote collaboration? Do you see a easier will if you wish?
Right. Eventually, it goes into the collaboration between all about industry client, but immediately it's more close to the best practice. So I'm gonna give some our business, what we do, how we do those things, and then one thing is that the DSM has developed an enzyme technology called the Ronozyme, which enable animal farmers to improve their animal performance, and also, from their farm, they are able to reduce greenhouse gas emission by using these technologies. So those are the stories that I like to introduce. So if you allow me, then I'm going to introduce now. Other than a while, if it's not, then I will just jump in later.
No, please go ahead, about Jason.
Okay, fine, thank you. With this Ronozyme technology that I introduced about enzyme technology, we created a life cycle assessment concept, and then do the assessment of how this product, enable to contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emission, and then all of those, Ronozyme product can reduce greenhouse gas emission, while some of them are also, affecting reducing the emission of other nutrients like nitrogen or phosphorus. Those are the ones that we do. As an example, protein enzyme, we call this PROACT. Worldwide, our DSM organization, if we apply it for our customers, we may reduce around 130,000 tons of total the methane gas from this application. That is significant, something about impact on the environment issues. And then with this life cycle assessment calculation, what we do now with our customer is that in 2020, what we did was we were able to calculate around 61,000 tons of CO2 gas emission that is reduced by using our these technologies, and that is like 61,000 tons of CO2 gas emission reduction. It means, in other words, it is also equivalent to around 1.6 million tree plantation equivalent in terms of CO2 gas reduction or else oxygen creation, right? And this is also another calculation is that we are able to reduce around 25,000 cars operation from the road. That also may help, cleaning the areas. That is not directly, but indirectly we are able to contribute. Of course, those kind of application of the technical application at the farm level is primarily the benefit is about something about improving the performance from the animals. Those are what we do now. And then with this overall about our advanced technology, our customers are also participating over here. Customer means all about animal industry clients, like big feeder millers and the big farmers and integrators. And then we just do coordinate each other and then to organize one community for socializing this kind of our activity. And also we select our customer who contribute more about greenhouse gas emission, reduction of greenhouse gas emission. And then annual basis, we do recognize their contribution to these activities. These are what we do as one of our best practice in climate changes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that leads very well to others, and I want to ask them about their company sustainable practice. I want to turn to Roland. How does KLM manage its carbon footprint? Have you found a way to transform your operations to become more sustainable?
Yes, thank you for the question. I would say the environment has been on our, let's say, program since a long time. We've started with the KLM Environment Plan back in 1990. Way too late, but still we started, and I think we were one of the first airlines to think about the sustainability. Also recognized by Dow Jones Sustainability Index as being in the top for the last 16 years. Now, what does it concretely mean? Of course, you start with the SDGs as your starting point. But what we do is we focus on three elements. What can we do to become more sustainable in the air, on the ground, and around us, meaning the world? So we've developed, let's say, a strategy, of course, with our, let's say, together with Air France. So we're Air France KLM, have a joint strategy working on this and learn from each other. But those three elements in the air, on the ground, and the world, there we try to make the difference. And there's a lot of examples that we can think of, meaning buying different aircraft that are, let's say, less consuming the kerosene itself, looking for different kind of fuel, like the sustainable aviation fuel. We were the first airline to pioneer and test and see and fly to Madrid from Amsterdam, testing this type of fuel. But there's so many more. Even working together with universities like the University of Delft to see how we can develop together a new aircraft model, which is called the Flying V. Then on the ground, you go for electrical cars that you can tow the airplane with. You can look for recycling. And together with, let's say, also with Indonesia, we try to see how we can recycle our waste. And that's a big challenge as an example. So in Europe, we can recycle our waste simply, our plastic bottles, for example. We recycle them and create new material with a 3D printer, for example. We recycle the coffee ground, just a new idea that came up, and we have a lot of coffee on board. But let's say the ground by itself can be recycled and used for different elements in the chain. Then, of course, we have not only the environment itself, but it's also about people. So we think about our own people and create the employee experience. That's also part of sustainability. And on top of it is to see how we can, let's say, help improve, let's say, the local environment. So what can we do in Indonesia itself? What can we do in Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, all the countries that we cover to make sure that we give something back that is not just flying there, but see what we can do for the environment itself locally, and not just, let's say, at the head office itself. There's plenty of examples I can give, but that's at least the philosophy that we have. That's we've initiated in 1990 with a clear strategy by itself and recognized by Dow Jones Sustainability Index.
Yeah. Okay, great. And by the way, I'm also an advisor at the Tourism Ministry in Indonesia, and I know they have this great idea that for tourists who want to fly to Indonesia, they can count how much carbon they will produce, and they can buy trees to be planted that would absorb carbon equal to what they will be producing. So if KLM can do that for their passengers, I think that there'll be a happy ending for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Dino. Yeah, we have it. We call it CO2 zero.
Okay.
It's 50. If you would buy a ticket from Jakarta to Amsterdam, you want to compensate your CO2 emission, you click on the button when you book your ticket online, and it's an extra charge of €15. And we guarantee that it's a CO2 offset via the gold label recognized, let's say, organization actually in Panama, where we planted trees. So we warmly welcome these kind of initiatives, and it's available that we have. Thanks.
Okay. By the way, before I turn to Yasmin, just out of curiosity, does the FAO, the international, not FAO, ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. Do they address these things on how to reduce emissions by airplanes, or not yet?
Yes, they do. It's ICAO based in Montreal, where I actually used to live.
Yeah.
It's a must. It's on the agenda. We have by 2015 a joint target to do the net zero emission. It's an effort that we all jointly signed for. And there's other agreements that we also look for together with IATA. So this is the organization of all airlines around the world, where we jointly sign for these kind of commitments, because we have to do it together.
Okay, good. It's good to know. Thank you. Yasmin, Royal Lestari Utama claimed itself to be a pioneer in sustainable natural rubber production. So can you tell me how your company is doing this to promote sustainability? Please.
Thank you, Dr. Dino. It's really a pleasure for me to be here. So thank you very much again for the invitation. So I think I will briefly explain about our work in sustainability. But before that, please allow me to explain a little bit about Royal Lestari Utama itself. So Royal Lestari Utama is a joint venture between Barito Pacific and Michelin. We were established in 2015 with the visions of building integrated sustainable natural rubber productions. We are under the license of HTI, or Forest Industrial License, under the government of Indonesia, where we manage concessions approximately 88,000 hectares located in Jambi and East Kalimantan. RLU itself is a forward-looking design to address significant challenge of the past deforestations, forest degradations, and other issues in the landscape. And in Jambi, we are actually strategically located in adjacent to Bukit 30 Natural Park, which is the 30 hills comprised of 143,000 hectares, which is home to the endangered species like Sumatran elephants, Sumatran tigers, orangutan, and many wildlife. The ideas of this project is to build a holistic approach on people, planet, profit. And in 2018, we are in partnerships with Tropical Landscape Finance Facilities, and we received the first Asia Sustainability Bond with a total amount of approximately around 95 million US dollar, where some of the partners, actually a very high partners like the Green Fund, which is based in Holland, also supported by the government of Indonesia, Blue Earth Capital, or before the name is PG Impact Investment, ADM Capital, BNP Paribas, UN Environment, and many more, as well as the USAID. What we work on the sustainability is we start with the environmental social due diligence, which it's quite a sophisticated due diligence done by the diameter and proffers. From there, we use the IFC performance standard, which is a World Bank standard on how we measure our milestones and KPIs moving forward. So RLU measuring their environmental and social impact, not based by RLU internal assessment, but actually it's from a very comprehensive and sophisticated dialogues with many stakeholders, including experts and our sustainability bond partners. In total of the 88,000 hectares that we manage as our concessions area, the 34,000 hectares will be used as commercial in the long term, while the remaining will be set aside as conservations, meaning conservations, restorations, biodiversity, and community livelihoods. So meaning it's up to 50% allocated for conservations and community livelihood. The reason why we think to have this kind of ambitions, because we cannot solve conservations issue just by doing conservations, at all, but also a hybrid between on how we're building a community livelihood, building community resilience, so they can gather impact from the reforestations and regenerations, forest regenerations, and biodiversities. And then later in 2018 as well, we worked together with P4F, Partnership for Forests, where we established in our concessions as well wildlife protections, wildlife conservations area, wildlife conservation area is 9,700 hectares, aimed to provide a long-term habitats for Sumatran elephants as well as Aralia protections area. At the same time, building establishment of livelihood for communities, including the indigenous of Orang Rimba, or what we used to know with Suku Anak Dalam. So it's a holistic approach, basically about people, planet, profits, on how we're trying to build a commercially viable rubber project, which the financing is measured against on how our conservations, as well as the social aspect, as well as the yield crops that we're trying to establish. And we hope that by the implementations of this approach will give impact, a sustainable impact, not just for the company, but also for the social environment.
Thank you. Thank you, Yasmin. Now let me turn to Agus. Agus, you know, you've always been an advocate of Low Carbon Development Initiative, LCDI. Can you share with us what is Landscape Indonesia's activities in this regard? And again, what kind of collaboration is needed to achieve that?
Yes, thank you, Dino. In addition to advising, government institutions on low carbon development and circular economy, we also develop businesses. So we incubate businesses. We provide mentorship, and we provide financial facilities for them to grow. And quite a number of things that we're doing in addition to the advices that we've provided. First is that we're developing a very, very fascinating initiative now, which is to turn plastic waste into liquid fuel. You know that plastic is made out of oil, and it can be turned back into oil through a process called pyrolysis. And as a matter of fact, the technology is very, very simple. So what we're doing is implementing it in Kepulauan Seribu, just north of Jakarta, and work with the communities there through waste banks and everything, so that they collect the plastics, and we, and then we provided the machines, and they get the training to be able to process the plastic waste, and out comes the oil that is actually, we test the oil, and it's actually about as good as, and in some indicators even better than the diesel oil that we've been using. And as a result, now the oil can be used by the fishermen in those islands, and they can get it for at least a very, very heavily discounted price, if not even for free, because it's theirs, it's not ours, right? Calculating the carbon content of the oil that comes out of the plastic waste, it's actually slightly less carbon intensive as if you pump oil from the ground. So it is a fascinating way to do it. We are also helping a number of logistics companies reducing or offsetting their emissions through a platform that you just mentioned earlier, Pak Dino, very, very similar platform. We call it Alam Kita, alamkita.id, in which companies and individuals can sign up to calculate automatically their emissions. And if they choose to, they can also choose to offset their emissions through a number of initiatives that could produce the offset. And it's actually a very, very interesting result. We move even further from there. Right now, just so that everyone knows, in Indonesia, we can already buy and sell renewable energy without having to go through PLN. And as such, we can actually entertain renewable energy 100 companies. I believe KLM is, I think it's an RE 100 company, right? A company that commits to, at one particular year in the future, supply 100% of its electricity with renewables. And we can already provide that now, today. For anyone who would be willing to go 100% renewable, we can provide that service. So it not only it increases the possibility for RE100 companies to reside in Indonesia, in which case it actually increases green investments. It also provides room, space for renewable electricity providers to join in. And as we know, the growth of electricity demand in Indonesia is still increasing, and it's better for us to fill the demand with renewables. So those are what we are doing. We are incubating them. It's very exciting set of businesses that we're working with. Very excited group of young people that have bright ideas that we collaborate with. And I think eventually these kinds of businesses would flourish, as we believe that sustainability is not an option, it is a necessity. Yeah, we are going that way, like it or not. And without which growth will be halted in the near future.
Okay.
If we're not doing it sustainably, we are basically not growing at all. And because of that, the room for sustainable business is going to grow rapidly and in a significant way.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Let me ask this question to any one of you. So, getting businesses to reduce emissions or target net zero is critical for a climate future. And 99.9% of businesses are small and medium and micro businesses, right? So not everyone is KLM and so on. And actually, I've been asked this question a lot by the small businesses. Okay, we want to help reduce emissions, but how do you count how much carbon my business emit, right? I didn't have the answer to that, right? So any one of you who can answer that question, if I have a small shoe factory or leather factory, how do I count how much carbon I emit? Yeah. Technical question. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say something about how to calculate from our business to our customers. Like I mentioned about our Renault technology, that we do, the business with our customers. We just monitor our customers, their business, eventually to the end user animal farmers. And we do apply our technologies and products and also measure the animal performance. Either, let's say, for example, animal eat feed and then they grow and they produce meat, milk, egg, and the others, right? And then with this, all of our sequences, we can measure all of our feed efficiency and also their, the animal end product production. And then with and without this kind of technology, we can measure different productivity and also different efficiency of the feed consumption. Then this feed consumption meaning, let's say, for example, all around the world, if we are able to save around 10 million ton of total soybean meal or corn cropping, that this also can be converted to the greenhouse gas emission. Eventually it goes to the greenhouse gas emission. This is the way that we measure it, and then we calculate it overall over the world, and also do the whole campaign with our customers and end users that they are not only doing their own farm business for their own for their own purpose, but also it is the way they do the contribution of this greenhouse gas emission. Those things are the way we do now.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also interesting because with this topic, it's an interesting question, because I think it is also a matters on everybody responsibility, right? It's the way we have to have a sustainable living, sustainable consumptions. Regarding the how the small medium enterprise can contribute, I think we can start from ourselves, from themselves, like we're trying to do efficiency in the energy, for instance, using a less energy, or we use a reusable packaging, for instance, or we do those kind of things that actually can help eventually reductions of the emissions reductions. So I think one of the aspects that also is very important is to teach or to educate the consumer, the customer, to be more sustainable in the way they living, stable consumption, sustainable living. So that's my takeaways for that.
Actually, I want to ask the Indonesian participants, but if Roland or Jason want to jump in, most welcome. But look, all of you, and including us, want a strong drive for change, right, for climate action. But I'm sorry, I'm not seeing a strong debate in Indonesia, right? I'm just hearing a lot of nice talks, right? But the debate, like you have debate on TV between the political parties, emotional, right? And debate on, I don't know, whatever issues, constitutional issues. We're not seeing that on climate change, right? Asif Agus, I think you're nodding, right? How come we're not having this debate, this really hard, honest debate where we challenge assumptions, where we push old ideas out, and so on, So what's happening, Bagus? Why is there an absence of a strong debate on climate action in Indonesia?
Yes, I can only theorize.
Do you agree with me?
I do agree with you.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I think we can do more in terms of putting climate change on a public space. Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And I think I can only theorize why. One is that I think the common Indonesians, average Indonesians, don't see climate change as an urgent matter. Yeah, it's a bit too far from their immediate needs and their immediate concerns. I think it is to some extent the mistakes that's made by us, who know about it and has not really done enough to put it in the public space, to educate, so to speak, the communities around us. But as we know, of course, climate change is here and now. It's not in the future. It's not outside of Indonesia. We are already facing the massive impacts of climate change. We've seen floods. If you remember, the floods in Kalimantan Selatan, in South Kalimantan, was really big. Of course, people are talking about a possibility of disrupted hydrology because of because of deforestation. But in addition to it, we hadn't seen for a very long time rain intensity that's that intense, that high. I think it was like the rain, volume of water that we would probably see in half a year in just one day, kind of thing. And that has happened also in European countries. In the Netherlands, I believe, there was also a massive flood in Germany, in London. Those that usually wouldn't be affected that much because of they have better infrastructure in doing so. So that, and also I think that it's still cheaper and easier not to care. Yeah, in Indonesia, in many, and I would imagine that in many other countries, but probably in Indonesia and in most developing countries, it's just cheaper and easier not to care, because we can still externalize the costs of climate change. We can still see that, or the cost of the environmental costs that are caused by our activities. We can get away with basically getting other people paid for the environmental impacts that we cause, and it's a little bit too easy to do that, and I think we should change that. And that can only change if and when we have very strong social capital. We need we really need to develop our our gotong royong in Indonesian, our social capital. That is the key to everything, almost everything, and it has been underestimated. The trust in the government is an indicator of strong social capital. The trust in each other is an indicator of strong social capital. The amount of crime, the amount of pollution is indeed a set of indicators of social capital. In areas, in places, in societies where civil society is strong, where social capital is strong, people can't just pollute without thinking about their neighbors. They are basically polluting their neighbors, and in a society where social capital is strong, they will be thinking twice or three times or several times before they do that, because they don't want to disturb their neighbors that way. In places where social capital is not that strong, we can probably just throw our daily waste to wherever. We don't even need to bother looking for a rubbish bin. We just throw it away to the environment. That's a simple indicator of
let me ask Pak Roland now. By the way, we've heard from Pak Agus about the Indonesian evolving mindset, but I understand in Holland, from the times that I've been there, climate consciousness is very strong. Even though the Netherlands has a smaller population relative to Indonesia, but I think the civil society, the consumer, the companies, and the government, have a strong climate consciousness. So I guess my question one is, how did that happen, right? I'm really interested in how. And secondly, from what you said earlier, it seemed that Air France KLM Group is trying to project itself as a green airline, obviously to cater to the market sentiment that is becoming green. How successful have you been in repositioning your airline to become, maybe the airline of choice for that segment of the market who also wants to save the world? Go ahead, Roland.
Thank you, Dr. Dino. I want to go quickly to a few comments, I'll say, on what, perhaps KLM sounds like a big company, but the differences can also be made by small and medium enterprises. And that's not applicable for any country anywhere in the world. On top of it, and giving an example of what we do as Air France KLM in Indonesia, when I came here January last year, they told me that the team in Indonesia was so proud and so happy with small things that they do. So they go out for lunch. They don't buy any, let's say, they don't use the plastic that you get when you get your lunch, but they bring their own little box, your own utensils. These are very small, simple steps that we can ask our team, our colleagues, our friends to do so. We've just recently launched a sustainable commitment within all the region for Air France KLM. And we've asked, honestly, the question to each and every individual, think about what you can do to make this world better. Stop using single plastics, take the bicycle instead of the car and think of it. But these are small steps that we need to take. next to, let's say, obviously the support from the government with rules and regulations. But start small and you inspire others, and then you can, let's say, accelerate further. Now, coming back to your question, Dr. Neil, about how did it happen? I think it started even a long time ago back in the Netherlands when floods took place in 1953 and obviously before, but big floodings we had in the province of Zeeland. We saw already the impact of the environment on a little country like us and the need to take action and to go forward. I think one thing that we are lucky to be living in a country where the GDP per capita is high, where wealth and education is also, let's say, at a high level. That gives also the opportunity to step out of the survival mode and think about not only, let's say, your daily bread and a roof above you, but it forces you to think about the rest of other than yourself. I think that has helped us, at least in the Netherlands, fueled by the government and fueled by political parties who are pushing very much for that green, sustainable development. Then the question on Air France KLM becoming more green. Obviously, an airline by nature is not necessarily green. We're 2 to 3% of the total CO2 emission responsible as an airline industry. And there's a risk of even growing it higher and higher. Right now, we're in the COVID-19 crisis. Obviously, less people travel. Still, airplanes fly, but not as much as we used to have. But we are let's say, a CO2 emission company. And we need and force ourselves how we can reduce that part. That's the belief that we have. That's what we want to go forward. And if let's say, if we can inspire others, including our customers, to follow our belief, then we can move ahead. Of course, in the last, I would say, 30 years, we've been already quite active on becoming more green. But I think the difference that we started to make was back in 2019 when we launched a campaign so-called Fly Responsibly. If you search for, let's say, the Fly Responsibly KLM, you can see a video where we invite all our stakeholders. That means consumers, governments, suppliers, you name it, anything that we work with, to find a way to jointly look for let's say, a more sustainable development. That's what we believe in, and that will follow and drive us also for the future. I think that's the only way forward. And it's being recognized, because that was your question, how successful are you? I think we can measure it with this Dow Jones Sustainability Index, the position of being in the top together with some others. That keeps us sharp. Always be on number one, and we've been there for quite some years, not necessarily now, but it keeps us sharp. On top of it, give an example, the CO2 zero, so compensating your CO2 emissions when you fly from Jakarta to Amsterdam and beyond. Let's say, before COVID, we had roughly around 300 passengers, let's say, of all the passengers that we have on a yearly basis, who use the CO2 zero. Relatively high compared to the whole the Southeast Asia and Oceania region. So there is a thinking in Indonesia to compensate the CO2 emission, but it's only the start. And these kind of measurements, let's say, way of measuring we have. So it's the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, it's looking at CO2 zero program, and another one with corporate companies. We have it with Microsoft, for example, where we asked them, would you be able to let's say, to fund us and help us buying sustainable aviation fuel, compensating your CO2 emission, because sustainable aviation fuel is up to 6 times higher than the price than normal. So we need you to help us to buy this fuel. Right now, airlines are in dire straits and we need that support, but we do it, let's say, to become more sustainable. I hope that answers a bit of the question.
Very interesting.
And maybe later on Agus, I warmly welcome your suggestion on we have a lot of plastic bottles on board. We need to recycle those.
You should probably buy the fuel from the communities that we work with that's produced from plastic waste. Yeah.
And these platforms that we need. So you see that there's a link that I didn't know about. We need to, let's say, talk together and see how we can support each other becoming more sustainable and get the fuel from plastic bottles. We have a lot of plastic bottles. One challenge, though, just to conclude, is our plastic bottles are considered as, let's say, hazardous waste because it comes from a different country. This is the reality we face. I had the same issue in Canada. We fly a lot of waste around the world. And when we get to the final destination other than our own country, we cannot recycle because it's considered hazardous. So we need governments also to open up and say, it is not hazardous. We only welcome, let's say, less waste, obviously, but can we find a way to recycle those bottles, for example? And that's what it's about, the collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I have an interesting question to ask each one of you. Okay, you want to push net zero emission, you want to reduce emissions, and you want to promote environmental sustainability for your business. But what if you operate in a market where the consumers just don't care? I mean, in Indonesia, for example, I know a dozen kabupaten or districts where the local population is just dependent on coal mining, right? And so on and so on, and they just couldn't care less about climate change or the environment. Yet you have a business that want to do good, right? So how does that work, right? So you got to make money, right? You got to make money, and that's your market right there. That's your consumers, right? So how do you do it when your market is not ready yet or it's not up to speed yet?
In the agriculture area, like include the livestock industry, we have to understand the implication of all of those industries about climate changes, because roughly in general, it was studied that around 15% of total greenhouse gas emission come from animal industry, and also all just extend to the entire agriculture industry. Indonesia has roughly around 30% of total workforce is working in these areas, whilst their average income is not that much high, and 30% of total portion is not a small portion that has to be taken care of, while they are less aware of all of those environmental changes. So this is something of an implication that we are in, and for that purpose, other than we do pursue all about our profitable growth, we launched something about the social campaign, so-called "We Make It Possible." We make it possible means together with industry, together with the animal farmers and the agri farmers, we can something to improve something about environmental the conditions. That is something about initiated by DSM, and then it is not really long time, but again at the initial stage it was not really the well recognized, but now it's getting better and better, and we believe that this is the way we do the business sustainably for the futures.
Okay, good.
If I may,
please, Bagus.
I think Jason has already answered it really well. But first and foremost, I think sustainability is good for your business. I think that needs to be believed first, and I believe that all the panel members here would probably agree with me. Sustainable business is better than non-sustainable business. Sustainable business usually is much better managed than non-sustainable business. And if you see the performances of sustainable businesses in the stock exchange, you can see that they actually perform better than the average. And a lot of things could be shown that sustainable business is the way to go if we want to do business, if we want to do business sustainably. Second is that it's also good for our community, people who live around us, people who are dependent on our existence. That's the second thing. So market is definitely a major driving force for sustainability and sustainable production, but it's not the only driving force. The first driving force should be internally. that that it is how companies and businesses innovate, how companies and businesses continue to grow sustainably, and for which you do need to have sustainable practices within the company as well as between the company and the communities around you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree with you. You know, it's just like fighting corruption, right? You got to start with yourself, right? And you can't hope to wait until everybody is not corrupt anymore, right? Because that may take a million years, right? But you know, and now I have the pleasure to go to the second phase of our discussion, which is you're taking questions from the public, the viewers, and I'm pleased to say that they are still hanging on to the screen. So I think there's much to be learned from this discussion. So Esther is going to be your moderator for this portion. Please, Esther.
Thank you, Pak Dino, for contextualizing for our audience today. So we've been receiving a lot of questions, even when they are still registering and even now in the live chat room. And the first question is actually directed to Royal Lestari Utama. So Ibu Yasmin, over to you. Royal Lestari Utama just launched a community empowering program for Orang Rimba, and this translates to roughly the community that lives in the jungle or the forest. This is a unique angle on reaching sustainable development goals and also committing to the climate. So can you share with us what's the thought process behind this initiative and what you hope to achieve for the climate through this? And this comes from Jane Manalu.
Thank you very much for the questions. It's a very good question. I will start to the mindsets on why we do the sustainability. For our company is very clear because it is the right thing to do. And as Pak Agus Sari mentions, Pak Jason mentions, also Roland mentions that there is no other way. You know, we have to do it right now. And the reason why we start with the program with the Orang Rimba or Suku Anak Dalam, because you know the impact or the consequence of climate change is really the most vulnerable groups, which is Orang Rimba, the real guardian of the forest, right? As well as the women, as well as the children. They are the ones who become the first victims of the climate change itself. So the project is about on what we call with wildlife conservation area is building a 9,700 hectares area for protection area, which basically aim to be the safe habitat for the wildlife habitats where Sumatran elephant, for instance, is to provide a pathway for the Sumatran elephant, so it will reduce the human-elephant conflict. But at the same time, we also acknowledge that there are people who is living in the forest, such as Orang Rimba and Suku Anak Dalam. So what we do is really to have an integrated approach. First, what we do first is by appointing an expert. We work and we collaborative work with the Partnership for Forests and Rimba Bungaran Indonesia, which is the expert in the indigenous people. To do participatory mapping, stakeholder engagement based on the free prior informed consents, which is one of the baseline that we use. Also, IFC performance standard, which is a must-have for company like us, especially because we are part of the sustainability bond partners with CLFF. So we start with that, as well as building communications and engagement. The idea is to understand what is the obstacle and what is the perceived coming from the vulnerable groups like Orang Rimba, and what is the real issues on the ground and how we can solve together, as well as bringing or helping their livelihood through the alternative livelihoods. For instance, Pak Dino asking about on how we involve our customers or our community. In our case, maybe our communities. So our work is working on we build the community partnerships program or community-based framework, which the idea is to build like agroforestry programs. We establish demo plots that in Orang Rimba area, so they can, start to harvesting and then gain livelihood, gain income from there. Such as from Jernang. Jernang is a dragon blood plant, which is suitable as well for the forest, like durian and other agroforestry methods. We also work with the beekeeping training, which is one of the solutions to prevent or to mitigate human-elephant conflicts. With so there is no there will be a safe habitat for the elephant at the same time for the people. That's why we always see that on how we're trying to really tackling the environmental issues or conservation issues really through on how we empower the people who live there. So through our community partnerships program, jointly with the conservations program, I think it's one of the holistic approach that we do together with our partners like P4F, Bukit 30 National Park, where we do a joint patrols together, and on how we're trying to prevent and mitigate illegal logging, for instance, like we close all the access for the illegal logging through our conservation rangers teams jointly with the Bukit 30 National Park. It's part of our support to the Bukit 30 National Park on how we can working together and provide a safe buffer zone for the national park. The other thing is we also work with Orang Rimba on how Orang Rimba will help us to the protections and conservation activity itself, because they live in the forest, they gain the resource from the forest and also understands the wildlife. So that's some of the ideas and our programs that currently doing. Besides, we also developed a center of Orang Rimba that just recently established this year.
Thank you, Ibu. That all sounds so very wonderful. The next question comes from Mr. Gustav Daud from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Indonesia. How to raise commitment from the private sector? Should it be a mandatory regulation or encouragement with carrots? So this question is general to all panelists. I welcome anyone who would like to answer first.
I would start. I think it's for private sector as well as for many other players in the game. I think carrots is always better than regulation. It's always cheaper than regulation, and it's always enticing for the players. So indeed, what needs to be shown, and this needs to be shown about sustainability as well, is that investors, businesses should come into the space because there is a business opportunity in it. There is always a business opportunity in sustainability. There is a business opportunity that is better in sustainability than is in non-sustainable way of doing things. I would stop there. I would be keen in also listening to the other panelists as well.
Thank you, Mas Agus. Perhaps anyone? Yeah, there you go, Kihisan. Please go ahead.
I like to go with some diplomatic manner. I would say that with compromise way that very fundamental and the basic one can be regulated, while beyond there all about the other area could be of their own decisions. Because if everything is regulated by the government, then many entrepreneurs may feel a burden or something about a bit hesitating to enter in and also activating the business over here. So that would be the way that the very, very basic and the minimum level can be regulated, while the other can be of their own decisions.
Thank you, Jason. Roland, do you want to add to that, or Ibu Yasmin?
Yeah, thanks. I think the carrot can be the accelerator, but it's not sustainable by itself. So you can speed up the change, but if your carrot keeps on going and you need that carrot by itself, it becomes almost like an addiction. And you need to go without that addiction, which is the carrot. You need to make it a structural, sustainable change. But it can accelerate, and I think this we see around the world, that if you have a subsidy, let's call it this way, to change and go into a sustainable solution, that's perfect for the short term. On the long term, what we need first of all is a clear vision of where does the government want to go, what's important, use the SDGs that we all have, and then you can, let's say, use that accelerator, which is the carrot, but we need to move into a structural change.
Thank you for that. Ibu Yasmin, did you want to add or comment further?
No, yeah, basically I agree with all of the comments. I think combinations between the two, collaborations with the government is very important. That's all. Yeah, I think a clear regulations and also maybe a support for the company that has doing a sustainable activity is something can be an option as well. But at one point, I think sustainability is, it's something that is the right thing to do, and it's not just driven by the government, but what I understand is actually driven by the customer. The reason why, there's a massive trends about sustainability is because it's coming from the society, and that's what's good about that. And finally, all the stakeholders, I think, have a growing awareness about the importance of having this sustainability from private sectors, government, societies, academics, students. I think hopefully we can go towards that directions.
Great. The next question comes from Robin Van Boxtel. This is directed to Roland. Do you intend to work together on the KLM Corporate Sustainable Aviation Fuel Program with KLM Flying Blue partner Garuda Indonesia? And second question, we also understand that waste collection at Jakarta Airport is a topic that KLM tried to address with the authorities. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so just on the sustainable aviation fuel, if we can cooperate and work together with other partners, including airline partners like Garuda, of course, let's go and find that solution together. In the Netherlands itself, we have partnered with actually some other producers of sustainable aviation fuel, Sky Energy, for example, and we're going to co-create, let's say, a plant a little bit more in the northern part of the Netherlands that will create sustainable aviation fuel. We will need partners. We can't do it all by ourselves. We don't have the money for it. Same would be, for example, in Indonesia. Can we find and create a sustainable aviation fuel plant that can help us in Indonesia itself? We look for partners, obviously, and it's a big investment and a big commitment that we need to give. Can't do it overnight, but always open for partnerships from that perspective. Sorry, and the second question again, please? The
second question was about the waste collection problem at Jakarta Airport. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So like I said before, our waste, our customers' waste, our own waste that we have on board is considered as hazardous waste. Then what you need to do is find a way with the airport, with the local government and local authorities to see if we can find a way to recycle this waste. Warmly welcome any suggestions to see how we can do it, understanding fully that you cannot change this kind of regulation overnight. But obviously there's plenty of waste, and instead of having it as landfill or simply burn it, why don't we find a solution and see how we can recycle it? Get this plastic changed into fuel, for example, or have it changed into material that we can use for 3D printing, for example, which we do back in the Netherlands. I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
Hopefully it answers the question too, to all of our audience who are watching. The next question is directed to Mas Agus. There's a question from Freddie, who's a data analytics team from Grab. How do you see the potential of green financing or green bonds for sustainable infrastructure development? I believe you're muted.
Okay.
There we have it.
I didn't know I was muted. Okay. I think the opportunity is immense. Green bond is indeed a good way to raise financing for green investments. Indonesia has actually put together probably the first in the world in 2018 of what was called the green sukuk. Sukuk is like bond, but using Islamic principles. And in 2018, Indonesia actually issued a green bond. And I think we raised upside of $1 billion. And since then, we raised a number of additional green bonds, like once every year, $1 billion each. And we see that the demand actually far outweighs the supply. It's basically oversubscribed by, 2.5, 3.5 x, 3.5 times the supply. So, and it is also good because it spreads the risk among, among investors. It's also low cost because, because of Indonesia's current credit rating, or investment rating. Then we would actually be able to issue our bonds at a very, very low cost, which people actually, investors have been trusting Indonesia as a bond issuer so far, which is really good. So in the future, if we are talking about large-scale green investment, large-scale green infrastructure, I think green bond is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Agus. Yes,
may I add
something?
Yeah, because I just want to share some experience since I'm also the RLU, also one of the recipients of sustainability bond through the TLFF. We received $95 million US in 2018. I think the green bond or sustainability bond is one of the solutions. I think it is one of the answers from the collaborations between private sector, financiers, the government, or donor bodies, because the requirements and the measurement that they use, that we use, is very, very detailed and very sophisticated. If I can refer to the IFC performance standards from 1 to 8. And I think it will help the company at one point to have a better understanding on how they're doing a sustainable business. At the same time, also tackling some challenge they face, in their industry. In addition to that, it's actually also leverage the potential. For instance, from RLU experience, just a little bit story from after the sustainability bond, we also partnering with P4F for the wildlife conservation area. And this year, we also partnering with IDH, Sustainable Trade Initiative from Netherlands, where they support us in the community partnerships program, basically on how we're trying to building community resilience livelihood and alternative livelihood so they can experience an increasing of the income at the same time having an impact on their, from the reforestations, from their forest regeneration. So I think green bond or sustainability bond is one of the solutions, and it also at the same time we can sharing ideas as inspirations one to another from the different stakeholders. Yeah.
Thank you, Ibu, for sharing your experience with that regard. The next question comes from Monica Irene, who's a researcher at Rapid Microbiosystems. This is directed to Jason. DSM works with a lot of entities, and you have so many partnerships, for example, with Neste, producer of renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. Can you highlight any sustainable collaborative projects that you currently have in Indonesia?
In Indonesia, okay, the latest one would be we do socialize our, the current internal all of our sustainability campaign with our all industry clients that is just about to start within a year, and then now it is now accelerating about our activity with our client. Client means all animal industry clients like feeder mill and integrators, and also now we stretch up to the the full meat supply chain like slaughterhouse and also meat shop and also retail shop that just goes to all about our full supply chain. Those are something that we are doing now.
Thank you, Jason, for the answer. This is the last question, unfortunately, as we are nearing the end of our discussion today. And this question echoes what Ambassador Lambert mentioned this morning during his opening remarks. Obviously, no company can transition alone. It requires collaboration. So can each of you share what kind of support do you need further from your respective government in particular? So for example, for Roland and Jason, what do you need from the Dutch government, and from Yasmin and Agus, what do you need from the Indonesian government? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I can start. I think legal certainty is definitely what needs to be in place, and as such, we do need to make sure that we have sort of the minimum sustainability performance that's regulated by the government based on the government's analysis, of course, of what that minimum performance is, and get that actually as the standards. And everyone who's below that standard needs to be made responsible for not performing. And as such, that would create a healthy competition among companies. Yeah, no one would go towards unsustainable practices just simply because they would want to be more competitive than probably the other ones. And that, I think that standard legal certainty and eventually legal enforcement for companies that doesn't perform according to sustainability standards, according to social standards, according to environmental standards, needs to be in place. And that's, I think, what the government could do.
Thank you, Mas Agus. Whoever wants to go next, feel free to jump in.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One thing that we are, noticing is that there are, all the time many innovative products that is developed around the world that has to be brought into Indonesia for better, the performance as well as environmental control, right? With that one, all of those about the imported related technologies and products, supported by the government is very necessary for us, to do better. Over to you, Roland.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll keep it short. I want to make sure Jasmine also has time to respond to this one. First of all, for the Netherlands, we have a so-called Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition. DSM is also part of it. It's also a company like Shell who's included. This coalition discusses and challenges each other company about becoming more sustainable. That, and with the COVID-19 crisis, has also come up with, let's say, a Green Deal statement signed by 250 companies in total. So what I would see is, and by the way, it's the government that supports this coalition and fuels this kind of change. That is an inspiration to me that we can sort of copy-paste potentially towards other countries, including Indonesia. And let's say the race to zero, I think that was music to my ears when I heard the beginning of this introduction. So I would say, inspire each other, look at solutions that you see in other places, like the Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition, and see how we can use it, for example, in Indonesia. The government can help and fuel and accelerate that part for sure.
Thank you, Roland. Ibu Yasmin, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I will be very short here. I think as a company, we manage a very strong engagement. We see that the government as a main stakeholder for the company. I completely agree with Pak Agusari to have minimum requirements for sustainability for a company, for instance, as well as a lesson learned how we inspire each other from other country experience. as Roland has mentioned as well, can be a good idea to deep dive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. So that wraps up our discussion today as well as the forum altogether. We have heard from various leaders from private sector who are taking climate steps and sustainability steps, both in Netherlands and in Indonesia. We have heard from right now KLM Royal Dutch Airline, RLU, Landscape Indonesia, Royal DSM, and earlier today we have Indica Energy, we have Grab Indonesia. We have so many people basically. So I would like to say thank you on behalf of Foreign Policy Committee of Indonesia and the Netherlands Embassy. And before we say goodbye to all of our panelists and attendees, I'd like to pass over the mic to FPCI Chairman Dr. Dino to say his closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Esther. And again, Roland, Jason, Pa Agus, Yasmin, thank you for a really stimulating discussion. I just want to make 2 points as we close this wonderful event. One is, look, FPCI's message to the public is be scared and be bold, right? And it's important for us to be scared because if you look at the facts of what will happen 30, 40 years from now, if we don't change the way we live, if we don't start decarbonizing, then the nightmare is going to hit the next generation. I don't know if I'll still be alive by then, but my kids will be, and they will live in a world that feels like hell, right? And we are seeing the signs of it already this year. You know, you see what happened in Vancouver, the heat wave that was just not livable, right? You see the forest fires in Russia, in northwest United States. You see the floods in Sudan, in the fires in Turkey, in Indonesia. We have for the first time cyclones from the sea going to land, and so on. I mean, I don't need to describe it to you. Everybody agrees that the anecdotal and scientific signs of climate change is here. So you got to be scared, right? And being scared is important because if you're not scared, you're not alert and you don't take strong actions. But if you're scared, then you are alert, you are aware, you plan, you strategize, and you take bold actions, right? So being scared is half of the equation, and the other half is really be bold. And today, you know, we saw a number of companies that are taking bold actions to do something different, to decarbonize their business practice. And I think we learn a lot from what they do. Unfortunately, these guys are still the minority, right? Companies that are practicing green business practices are not in the majority of businesses around the world, right? And I think that's true for Indonesia. So it's really important that we scale up, right? It's really important that you know, we see this not just as an existential threat, as a necessity, as Pa Agus said, but also as an economic opportunity and also a social empowerment opportunity, right? So that's one point. Be bold, be scared, and be bold, right? And the second point is, look, I'm really convinced that incremental steps is not gonna save the day, right? Yes, I mean, I turn my lights off now, you know, I'm trying to buy a solar panel for my roof, you know, I save plastics now and so on, you know. But small steps will have some impact, but it's not going to deliver us a climate secure, climate safe world by 2050. What is needed is not incremental steps. What is needed is a fundamental transformation of our society, of our economy, right? Again, the keyword is transformation, right? So it's not incremental, but transformational. And I think that is the great thing about living today. Nobody has the answers. Everybody knows where we need to be. Yeah, 1.5 degree world or 2 degree world. temperature rise, right? But in terms of policies, in terms of models, in terms of practice, innovations is wide open, right? Even I'm a diplomat, even for diplomacy is wide open. How you cooperate, how the rich countries cooperate with the developing countries, right? And so on, and how do you punch above the weight and so on, right? So let's do our best to ensure that this big transformation, not small incremental measures, are going to take place, because the risk, the bet, what is at stake is really not one society, not a certain region. What is at stake is the permanent future of planet Earth and the permanent future of our next generations and the next generations, right? So it's really, as somebody said, it's the mother of all problems, right? If you get this wrong, everything falls apart. But if you get this right, then you have a good chance of saving the world and preserving humanity. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you to all our panelists. You've been very inspiring. You've turned me into a big fan, and please, if any chance FPCI can cooperate with you, please give us a call, and let's move on together with the climate agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Padino.
Thank you, Padino. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you,
Thank
Jason,
you.
Agus, and Yasmin.
Thank you.
Yasmin, Pak Jason, Roland.
Thank you.
Tambayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Reza Radian. Saya Ciko Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan. Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
yang modern,
maju,
makmur,
sejahtera,
hijau, adil, aman, bebas korupsi,
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan,
bukan separatisme,
bukan perang nuklir,
bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
pemanasan global,
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
Saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
Dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
Polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
Hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
Dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, Ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai nol emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
So that was the climate campaign video produced by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. And with that having been played, we have officially closed the forum of Dutch-Indonesian private sector engagement in the race to zero. On behalf of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, we'd like to thank as well to our partner, the Netherlands Embassy in Indonesia, for supporting us with this and cooperating and collaborating with us in furthering the agenda of climate action and further increasing the awareness of the importance of climate action to the Indonesian public. Earlier throughout the day, we've been listening to so many, not only insightful, but also inspirational messages from business leaders both in Netherlands and Indonesia. We heard from Neneng Gunadi, Grab Indonesia, about how Grab will switch to electric vehicles in the future and reach a net zero emissions goal. We heard from Rami Hajar, CEO of Signify Indonesia, how Signify Southeast Asia, my apologies, about how the company was able to turn into carbon neutrality even at this point and reach 100% renewable electricity. We heard as well from Aziz Arman, the Vice President Director of Indica Energy, about how the company aims to diversify its energy portfolio and increase its revenue from non-coal streams by 50% by 2025. We heard from Ika Novira, Corporate Affairs Directors of PT Multi Bintang Indonesia, how the company can also step up its climate commitment and reach net zero emissions by 2030. And just recently, we closed discussion on cross-sector collaboration for climate action, and we learned how the KLM Royal Dutch Airline collaborated with the universities in the Netherlands and also with the Netherlands Ministry in developing the Sustainable Aviation Program. We also hosted Agusari, the CEO of Landscape Indonesia and also the lead author on IPCC panel, and how he advocated for low carbon development initiative for Indonesia and how the economy and sustainability practices does not actually is not contradictory to one another. It's actually complementary. We heard also from Jason Park from Royal DSM how technology plays a huge and central role in furthering climate action and also enabling a sustainable environment, business practitioners, and also reaching, our carbon neutrality goal and reducing massive greenhouse gas emissions. Lastly, but surely not the least, there was also Yasmin Sagita from PT Royal Lestari Utama, who shared a different angle of sustainable development goals, which is by empowering communities and societies to take care of the planet. So there you have it, our 8 amazing panelists from 8 different companies from Indonesia and Netherlands. And hopefully through this discussion, there will be more further discussions in the future about how we can make an enabling environment in Indonesia for businesses and corporate and then private sector to play an increasingly bigger role in climate commitments, especially with the UN Climate Summit nearing in November. Thank you so much for all of our attendees who have been participating since the beginning up until the end, and for all of your queries about how to receive your e-certificates. Please make sure that you're registered on our Eventbrite form, and then we will be sending you your e-certificates within the next few days. Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.